Hey guys, today I'll be ranking the top 130 greatest NBA and ABA players of all time. The reason I'm doing this is because I made a few videos already on my YouTube that ranks the top 100 greatest movies of all time, the top 100 greatest video games of all time, and I already made a few videos already talking about the greatest players of each NBA position, or each basketball position, right? So, I have one for point guards, for shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards, and centers. So I have 40 players, actually 44 players because I put some extra guys in here. I made a list of 44 players for each position in basketball. That's 5 positions, right? So 44 guys for each position. And then I did this ranking, and I think it makes more sense to me because a lot of people want to rank different players just across different eras, across different positions, and I think it doesn't really make sense to rank these players just on different positions, right? Across positions is what I mean, right? I want to rank them per position. It makes more sense. It makes it more comparable. But ranking them just across positions and stuff like that makes it, it's not really fair to compare, right? Like you can't compare center to a point guard, right? They're totally different positions. But anyways, that's what most people do. But for me, I prefer to rank it based on position because it makes more sense to me. It's a lot more fair, I think, because they play the same position. It's easier to rank them. But I do rank them across eras, and the reason is because I want to compare each player. To me, this is what the greatest of all time means, or any kind of greatest list, is it's ranked based on what each player accomplished in their era, right? So I'm not comparing across eras. I'm not saying, hey, would this guy from the 1950s or 1960s be able to play today? I'm not saying that, right? I'm not comparing that because that's not fair to older players, right? Because the older players are the pioneers, and if they play today, obviously they're not going to be as good as the players of today. So that's not a fair comparison because the older players played in that time, right? That's not fair to them, right? They played before, they were the pioneers, they set the stage for players today to be better, right? So it doesn't make sense for me to say, oh, if this guy from the 1950s in the gym, obviously loses to this guy, modern day NBA players, right? And that means he's not as good. I'm not saying who's better, right? Greatest to me doesn't mean who's better. Like for example, Bob Pettit, right? This great player from the 1950s. Bob Pettit, my power forwards list, probably top 5 power forward of all time, right? For me, because I base him on what he accomplished in his era. Obviously, today, if he was in the gym versus Anthony Davis is going to kill him, right? Because Bob Pettit played in the 1950s. So you can't compare that. But for me, based on what they did in their era, right? So based on what Bob Pettit did in his era versus what AD did in his era, right? I think Bob Pettit accomplished more in his era. That's why I rank him higher. To me, that's what greatness means, right? Greatness is what you did in your era relative to what others did in their era, right? It doesn't make sense for me just to compare, oh, would this player be able to play today? That's not what I'm doing, right? That's not fair to older players. So that's what I'm going to do. Just a disclaimer, right? For these greatest lists, for me, the definition of greatest is what they did in their era, their accomplishments relative to their era, right? So, disclaimer here, okay? I'm not saying this guy from 1950s or 60s would be better than the player now. Of course not, right? I'm saying that they were greater because they did more in their era compared to that player today, right? So, that's a disclaimer I want to put forward. And yeah, I prefer to just compare in the same position, but some people told me, hey, you did a top 100 list for movies and video games, and you kind of compared across different genres, right? For movies, comedies, dramas, horrors, action. You compared across the genres, and for video games, same thing. You compared RPGs to action games, adventure games, platformers, puzzle games. You kind of like did that cross comparison. So does it make sense for me? Maybe I should be like everyone else and make a list just comparing across different positions, right? Maybe I should give that a shot because that's apparently what everyone else does, right? They say, oh, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, even though they're totally they play different positions. Michael Jordan is shooting guard, LeBron James is a small forward, but still, even though they play different positions, people want to compare them. So okay, sure, I guess I'll give it a stab. What my ranking is just all time. I'm going to take 130 people. The reason I'm taking 130 is because my previous list for the all-time movies is top 100 plus 30 honorable mentions, right? So it's 100 plus 30 honorable mentions. Same thing for video games. My top 100 greatest video games plus 30 honorable mentions, that's 130, right? So here I want to make a same kind of list. Well, the honorable mentions are just an extra 30, right? So basically that's what it was, right? For my video games and movies, it was just a 130 list, right? Top 130 greatest American films of all time, and top 130 greatest video games of all time. So just to be fair, I'm just going to do 130 greatest NBA players. I'm going to try ranking them across positions now too, not just inside their own position, because that's what everyone else does, right? Everyone else apparently wants to compare LeBron to Jordan, or to Bird, or to Magic, or to Tim Duncan, across Kareem, like all these different positions. Okay, fine. That's what I'm going to do too. All right, so I'm going to take a sip of wine first. I got some wine tonight. All right, this is going to be interesting. So we're going to rank 130 players across different positions all time. Again, I'm going to do it just like I did for the movies and video games. 1 to 10, 11, 20, 21, 30. I'm not giving people an exact number, because an exact number is kind of like, how could you say with certainty, for example, that this player is exactly number 55 or exactly number 72 or something like that, right? To me, that's like, how could you know that player is exactly number 85 all time or something like that? It doesn't make sense, right? So I can't say it's that accurate, right? Because I can't exactly pinpoint and say that, hey, this player is exactly this number, right? So I'm just going to give a range, which is what I did with with my American film ranking and my movies ranking, is give you a range, right, of where I think this player belongs. Is he top 50? Is he top 60? Top 70? Top 80? In my opinion, right? This list is based on my opinion, so there's a disclaimer, okay? I have a lot of opinions that people don't agree with, right? If people watch my previous videos, they know I have some strong opinions about certain players that other people might not agree with, probably won't agree with. So this is my list, okay? All right, so let's start out. I'm going to be taking these guys from these 5 lists that I created. And something I'm going to note is that there's a few changes that I made in some of these lists. So when I did these videos, I think this list is fine, because I think I had this list in my videos, but I added a few extra players when me and my friend Eric did this ranking, and we created our all-time teams, and we drafted our all-time teams. I added a few extra players, and I did not mention that in my previous videos, so I'm going to just mention this again, because this was not in my greatest point guards video or shooting guards video stuff. So I'm going to mention these extra 4 guys I added in. Sam Cassell, one-time All-Star. Put him in here because he's a great role player. Just solid second, third option. I put in here Mookie Blaylock. Great defensive player, very underrated. A lot of people don't they don't mention Mookie Blaylock when we talk about the greatest perimeter defenders of all time. Mookie Blaylock definitely deserves to be up there. He deserves to be mentioned. Just great defensive point guard. Rod Strickland, one of the best players, maybe even the best player, never to be in an All-Star game. Just great passer, great handles. But yeah, never been to an All-Star game. Put him here as kind of this extra role player, wild card type of player. Baron Davis, which I kind of flip-flop back and forth between Norm Nixon or Baron Davis here. I think Norm Nixon and Baron Davis are very close, but Baron Davis kind of got the edge here. But yeah, again, good point guard, right? Not all-time 40, top 40 maybe, but maybe the top 50, which is why I have Baron Davis up here. All right, if shooting guards, first of all, I had Randy Smith here in my top 40. I took him out to put in Donnie Freeman. Reason why I put in Donnie Freeman, very underrated player, played for the ABA. Randy Smith, played in the NBA. So the thing is, hard to say which one is better all time. But I do think Donnie Freeman is greater, because he was 5-time All-Star, did a lot in the ABA. It's definitely one of the league's premier guards of that league. Whereas Randy Smith played for a long time, scored a lot of points, good player. I just think that relative to their accomplishments, Donnie Freeman did a little bit more than Randy Smith, so I put Donnie Freeman here. Michael Cooper here, never an All-Star, one of the best players to be one of the best players never to have an All-Star appearance, I think. 8-time All-Defensive player, very, very good defensive player. One of the best defensive perimeter players, again, along with Mookie Blaylock, very underrated. Defensive perimeter player, 5 championships, part of the Showtime Lakers. Everyone watch Showtime Lakers knows who Michael Cooper is. Very valuable. And got Jeff Hornacek. Jeff Hornacek's a very good role player as well. I put him here, 1-time All-Star. Very similar to Sam Cassell, I think, in that sense that he's just a very solid number 2, number 3 player. Drazen Petrovic, another guy who I think should have been an all-star, but was never an all-star. But yeah, I put him in here because he's one of the best shooting guards before he tragically died in his prime. But I do think Drazen Petrovic deserves to be here. And then I have Brandon Roy, who I also think is a really good player in his prime before he had the degenerative knee condition, the injuries and stuff. Again, very good player in his prime. So Brandon Roy has to be up here just for his prime, I guess. Small forwards. I put in Andre Iguodala, very good wing defender. Finals MVP. Right? Everyone knows he did really well with the Warriors as a bench player. So, and he was also the guy in Philadelphia as well. Just never really got anywhere. And then here I got Anton Jamison. Not a really good player, just a guy who scored a lot of points. Anton Jamison he just scored like a shitload of points, So I guess I have him here. I mean, he scored 20,000 points, right? I know he's a two-time All-Star. Not great player, but just solid scorer in this longevity and everything. Anton Jamison's there. Meta World Peace, again, just like Andre Iguodala, really good wing defender. Someone you love to have as a role player on your team. Just doing all the dirty work. Very good wing defender, right? Just Meta World Peace, got to have him in there. I think he's underappreciated. And same thing with Lamar Odom. So I used to have Rashard Lewis here. I think Lamar Odom's a bit better. The thing about Lamar Odom is he's really underappreciated. Never an all-star. Again, one of the best players never to be an all-star. But Lamar Odom, I think, was underutilized in his career. Great post scorer, good basketball IQ, could rebound very well, passes really well for his size. I think if you look at his early years in the Clippers and with the Lakers, he averaged like 4 or 5 assists a game, right? So for a big guy, like really good passer, fantastic. Just underutilized with the Lakers, I think, and probably underappreciated because a lot of Kobe fans like to downgrade him because they want Kobe to be the guy. So they talk about Smush Parker, Kwame Brown, but they don't mention Lamar Odom because he's actually a pretty good player. So they don't mention him, which kind of makes him even more underappreciated. But yeah, I think he never really got his chance to shine. But Lamar Odom's a very talented player, so I had to put him on here. And then PS, I got Draymond Green. A very good defender, of course. Some people put him top 10 defender, top 5 defender all time. I don't put him that high, but he is a really good defender. But I'm not going to put him. I don't think he's top 10. But for his era, I think he's very good. Yeah, I mean, guy's defensive player of the year, could do a little bit of everything. Can guard a lot of different positions. Very versatile. Very solid role player. Again, Hall of Famer probably as well. But yeah, I think probably like a third, fourth option. Really good. Horace Grant, same thing. Good defensive player. Good third or fourth option on a team. Very similar to Draymond Green, I would say. Paul Silas, again, very similar because third or fourth option, just defensive guy, right? These guys, none of these guys are like terrific offensive guys, but yeah, like Paul Silas, very similar to Draymond Green, Horace Grant, like limited offense but solid defense, and probably someone you want on your team as a role player. And then I have Otis Thorpe here. Again, a nice guy to have on your team as a role player. Solid role player guy. Now here I have Dan Roundfield, who I think is very underrated in top 40. Very underrated player. He's really good defensively. So a lot of people don't mention Dan Roundfield. But Dan Roundfield's decent offensively, but really good defensively. So when you talk about best defensive power forwards, Dan Roundfield has to be in that discussion. Just most people just forget about him because he kind of just didn't go anywhere with the Hawks in the 80s, but really good player. Right, centers. We're gonna put here Rudy Gobert, right? Fantastic defensive player for his era. Very solid rebounder too. Yeah, it's a good player. So Rudy Gobert, again, not your top guy for your offense, but talking about defense, right? He's one of the best. Same thing, DeAndre Jordan, Tyson Chandler. These guys very similar. Great rebounders, great defensive players. DeAndre Jordan is actually more close to Rudy Gobert in terms of rebounding. I think he's one of the best. Again, defensively, very good. Tyson Chandler, same thing. Very good defensively. But probably, I would say Gobert, then DeAndre, and then Tyson Chandler. Probably in that order. And then Vlade Divac as another great guy, kind of underappreciated. Yeah, very solid player. Not going to be your first or second offensive option, but um, he'll do all the dirty work. You know, like he'll do a little bit of everything. He's actually pretty versatile because he's kind of like Lamar Odom in the sense that he'll give you a little bit of everything. He's very versatile. He can score, can rebound, can pass well for his size, and he can do a little bit defensively too. So he's very similar to Lamar Odom in that sense. But yeah, that's my extra addition. So let's go forward with the ranking the top 130 greatest NBA players. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take it from these lists. The top 20 to 30 guys are pretty easy, I think. So obviously Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan has to be number one, right? Number one for me, at least. So I'm putting Michael Jordan there. Number one, but you know, obviously he has to be top 10. There's no way he's not top 10, right? Even if you don't have Jordan number one, which some people don't, but like most people have him number one, has to be in the top 10. Then same thing, LeBron James. I know there's a lot of LeBron haters there, but you know, you just gotta look at him objectively with what he achieved. There's no way he's not. Like, he has to be top 3. Like, top 3, right? And top 10, obviously, but like, look at objectively as it had his accomplishments, his achievements, and everything, his stats, everything. Just, he has to be objectively top 3. So LeBron there. After that, it's also pretty easy because next one's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? Has to be for me. For me, he's in the top. For me, these are my top 3 guys. Jordan, LeBron, and Kareem, top 3. I think. I mean, even if you don't have Kareem top 3, top 5 has to be. Just his body of work is so huge. All-time NBA scorer, right? 38,000 points, 6 MVPs. I mean, yeah, to play 20 seasons, average 24 points, 11 rebounds. Like, yeah, you got to have him there. Next up, Bill Russell. Has to be top 10. Whoops. There's Bill Russell there. Bill Russell has to be top 10 all time. Why? 11 championships, 5 MVPs, the greatest defensive player of all time, the most dominant dynasty, maybe in all of pro sports. I mean, how could you not have Bill Russell? Top 10 all time. He has to be. So he's there. Next up, Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, because along with Russell, you have Wilt, right? So yes, Wilt Chamberlain, dominance is what I think about. I mean, just look at all his records, right? 100-point game, average 50 points in a season, 55 rebounds. So many amazing stats. Led the league in assists as a center. Averaged 23 rebounds for his career, which no player has ever done for a single season. And Wilt did it for an entire career. Averaged 45 minutes a game. 45 minutes. No player has even come close to averaging that. Like, even for a single season, 45 minutes is tough. Wilt did that for his entire career. So, just his accomplishments is incredible. Just dominance. Pure dominance. So, gotta have Wilt in the top 10. After that, still a few more centers, I think. So let's go back to the PFs. Okay, Tim Duncan. I think Tim Duncan has to be in top 10. Greatest power forward ever. 5 rings. 2 MVPs, 3 finals MVPs. Did whatever his team needed him to do. Just that's it. Just the perfect player. You want him on your team every time. Just never complains about anything. Great player. Didn't care too much about his stats. Just did whatever was necessary to win. Same with Bill Russell. All right. Next, Larry Bird, I think. And again, this is not in order. This is just who guys I think are in top 10. This is not in order. Just these guys are all in the top 10. So yeah, Larry Bird, because he does a little bit of everything. Can shoot, score, can pass, can rebound, can defend a little bit too. So Bird just did everything. Tough player. Very, very mentally tough. 3 MVPs, 3 rings. What can you say? Just greatest white player ever, right? Definitely top 10. Let's see. Who else? Magic Johnson, I think, has to be top 10. Right? Magic and Bird both have to be here because Magic, greatest point guard ever, 5 rings, 3 MVPs, 3 Finals MVPs, highest assist average of all time, 11 assists a game, makes all his teammates better, possibly the greatest fast break general of all time. So if you want a fast break, Magic's your guy. So yeah, gotta have Magic Johnson there. So last 2 spots are really interesting. A lot of people would say Kobe Bryant. But the thing about Kobe is, people who watch my YouTube channel know that I'm not a huge fan of Kobe. Neither is my friend Eric. We're both not really huge fans of Kobe. And the reason is because his game is a little bit double-sided. So the things I like about Kobe, he has great work ethic. He's very tough, very competitive. His offensive moves, right? He has so many offensive moves. Makes him really difficult to guard one-on-one. Very, just he has an arsenal of just offensive moves. But the thing about Kobe, his bad points are, well, his early years he was really good because playing with Shaq, he was willing to defer the ball a bit, but he played a little bit too much hero ball later on in his career, and it really hurt him. So his teams were actually ended up winning, like despite him, not because of him, right? So if you look at Kobe's best seasons, it's the seasons where he actually deferred the ball more. Like the seasons where he actually shot the most, those seasons he had obviously good scoring stats. Like sure, 81-point game, right? Everyone knows it. Or averaged 35 points in the season. Okay, good stats, but he didn't really lead his team anywhere doing that, right? So, and he had Lamar Odom, which I said he was very underrated. It's not that he just had Smush and Kwame. So, yeah, the thing is, his game is such a double-edged sword. So I'm not really sure. He's like fringe top 10 for me. He's just on the cusp of the top 10, but I'm not really sure whether to actually put him in top 10. Because he's a great player, very talented, but just he has so many downsides to him, especially later in his career where he didn't really trust any of his teammates, took too many bad shots. Again, this is my list, okay? I know that most people are going to have Kobe in their top 10, right? Or the top 5 even. But for me, I don't have Kobe in my top 10. I think he's just outside the top 10 for me. So let's get that out of the way. Please, I know a lot of people are going to hate on me for this, for not having Kobe in my top 10. But I just think his game is too much of a double-edged sword. Like, the thing he brings to the team, right, his offensive moves and stuff like that, but his defensive impact is not as good as people think. It's kind of overrated. And, yeah, sometimes he just hurts his team. I mean, he just takes too many bad shots. Doesn't pass the ball, trust his teammates enough, takes a lot of bad shots. A lot of his finals, like 2004 finals, you can basically just blame 2004 finals on Kobe, basically, right? Took too many bad shots, didn't pass to Shaq enough. 2010 finals, basically Paul Gasol did a lot of work in that playoffs. Kobe's best years were 2001, 2002, and 2009, where he actually pretty good pretty good playoff runs. But his other years are, I'm not sure. So there's actually 2 players I think might have a case over him. First one is Shaq. So I think Shaq can be top 10, and the reason is because just pure dominance, right? I mean, you talk about Wilt, you gotta talk about Shaq. In his prime, I mean, he was putting up ridiculous. You're getting 30 points a game, 14 rebounds. Could pass pretty well and defend pretty well when he was a Phil Jackson in his prime. Just really dominant player. So, is he better than Kobe? I think he is. I mean, he was the guy for three championships. Kobe was just the guy for 2, right? I mean, yeah, sure, Kobe was the second best player for that, but the fact that Shaq was so dominant in those series, I never seen Kobe really be that dominant, right? In the playoffs. I mean, all of Kobe's best games are actually in the regular season, if you notice that. So the thing, Shaq has amazing playoff games, right? Where he actually dominates, and amazing finals games where he dominates too, 2000 or 2000 to 2002, all of them he dominates. Kobe just did not have a finals like that. So another one I have to put maybe over Kobe. This is very controversial, but Hakeem Olajuwon as well. And the reason why I think Hakeem might be better than Kobe too is because, sure, he only has 2 rings, but what Hakeem gives you, given the supporting cast that he had, he didn't have a good supporting cast for most of his career. Didn't have a good supporting cast. He had Ralph Sampson, and then he had old Clyde Drexler, and that was it, really. That was that was all he had in his career. But despite that, one of the best defensive players of all time, one of the best two-way players of all time, amazing in the post. Yeah, like defense, offense, he'll give you what you want, right? And he won 2 rings with barely any supporting help, I would say. Yeah, I mean, he got Clyde Drexler for the second one, but still, he didn't have that much help, right, compared to some of these other guys. So I think Hakeem maybe is a top 10 player over Kobe, right? Because think about his supporting cast. He had Otis Thorpe for 1994. He had old Clyde Drexler. That was it. And he put up ridiculous performances in the finals. So I think Hakeem, and he beat Shaq, right? So yeah, I think Hakeem is probably going to be my top 10. Rounds out my top 10. All right, so 11 to 20. Okay, I said enough bad things about Kobe, but I think he's definitely 11 to 20. So I'll put Kobe here. Sorry, Kobe fans, he's not in my top 10, but he's definitely right outside of it. Another guy I got to put right outside of it is Jerry West. And Jerry West is also very close to Kobe for me because 9 NBA Finals, 27 points a game, good shooter, good defender, great team player, could pass just as well. I mean, he's a combo guard. Led the league in scoring and assists. Only player to win Finals MVP on a losing team. Yeah, I think Jerry West is really, I gotta have him, I think in 11 to 20 range at least. To me, he was the most complete guard before Michael Jordan, right? If you're talking offense and defense, probably the most complete guard before Jordan. So that's saying a lot. Who else? I think that's it for shooting guards. Point guards, who else would be top 20? Oscar Robertson, I think, right? All-around player, triple-doubles is what you think about, but he got them in an era where assists were pretty hard to get. Yeah, I mean, for his era, it's really close. West and Oscar, I think both of them are neck and neck. Oscar, probably better all-around, could rebound better. Obviously, he's bigger. Pass probably a bit better than West as well. Scoring, West definitely wins it. Defense, West wins it. Shooting, West wins it. But the rest, yeah, rebounding, passing, Oscar probably wins it. And Oscar was, yeah, just all-around dominant. So has to be top 20. Okay, now the other thing is a lot of people put Steph Curry top 20. Should I have Steph Curry top 20 all time? This is hard for me. I think he's like fringe top 20. The reason is because he just hasn't, he's been injured for a lot of his career, right? He's been injured for a lot of his career. I know he's the greatest shooter ever. No debate about that. He's the greatest shooter ever. I don't think he changed the game. A lot of people say he changed the game, but honestly, a lot of people just taking 3-pointers, like before Curry even. Like actually, if you look at the Spurs, 2013, 2014 Spurs, they took a lot of 3-pointers. If you go back before that, 3-pointers, people were just taking more of them after the hand-checking rules changed. So I think Curry's just a continuation of that. He just shoots more. He shoots a lot of 3-pointers on volume, and he makes a lot of them, right? So he's the greatest shooter ever. I just don't think he's a revolution. I think he's an evolution. But is he top 20 though? Thing is, I think he will be. After this season, I think I can consider him top 20. A lot of people, are saying, oh, Curry's already top 20, maybe even top 15 or top 10, but for me, it's just his longevity, like 3 rings, 2 MVPs, I get it, but I mean, did he really have much competition in the finals? I mean, he had KD for 2 of those, and then he had to face an injured team for another one. I'm not sure, right? And then 2016, 2019, obviously he lost. So, I think he could be top 20 now. I mean, just looking at his season, he's doing pretty well this season, even though his team's not winning that much. But But yeah, I think just the impact he has on his team with his shooting and spacing the floor is pretty good. It's pretty amazing. So I can put Curry top 20, but he's just going to be fringe top 20 for me. Yeah, fringe top 20, just on the cusp. Okay, small forwards. Who else is top 20? Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant's KD's there, and really I think KD's a little bit better than Curry. I mean, they were on the same team, right? They were on the same team, and KD won Finals MVP, was considered the better player, even though it was Curry's team, but KD was considered the better player. Just one of the best scorers of all time, right? Like, the guy, 7-footer, can shoot over anybody, just unguardable, basically, right? Just Kevin Durant has to be top 20 for me, like, just unguardable. Yeah, just one of the greatest scorers of all time. So he's so lengthy, and he's just so hard to guard because he can shoot from anywhere. He's got those long arms, his wingspan, everything. Yep. So I got KD there. Another guy I gotta have there is Dr. J. I think Dr. J has to be there. And just his accomplishments, being the greatest ABA player ever. If you count his ABA accomplishments, there's 4 MVPs, 3 rings, 2 Finals MVPs, dominating the ABA. Amazing dunker. Yeah, Dr. J was, for his time, he just dominated the league, right? Just dominated the league. So he has to be top 20. Right. In the NBA, sure, his career wasn't as dominant, but still, very influential player. So, yep, that's just what greatness is about, right? Being influential. So yeah. There. Okay. All right. Who else? I think that's it for small forwards. Top 20. Okay. Power forwards. Who's in the top 20? I think Karl Malone. And the reason Karl Malone is longevity, sustained longevity, and just such a solid scorer for such a long time. I mean, you're talking about a guy who averaged 25 points per game for like 19 seasons, 36,000 points, number 2 all time, 2 MVPs. He doesn't have a ring, but still, I mean, that's his sustained scoring dominance, and also averaged 10 rebounds, by the way, 25 and 10 for 19 seasons. So Mailman has to be up here. I think he's just, based on how durable he was, how consistent he was. I think Karl Malone has to be top 20. Who else? I think there could be a case for Bob Pettit too. Let's see who else would be in here. Yeah, I think. How many spots? We got 3 spots left. Yeah, I'm gonna say Bob Pettit. I know. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not judging these guys by how well they would play today. Obviously, Bob Pettit would get dominated today, but in his era, you're talking about a guy who averaged 26 points, 16 rebounds a game, 2 MVPs, only person to beat Bill Russell Celtics in the finals. You're talking about a guy who really accomplished a lot in his era. So I think he's very underrated. So Bob Pettit, I think, is in the top 20. Just for what he did in his era, like, he's obviously the best power forward of his era, bar none. And for me, he's actually even better than Elgin Baylor, because he's a better shooter than Elgin Baylor, better rebounder than Elgin Baylor. Might not be as athletic, or Elgin Baylor is a better scorer, but still, I think Bob Pettit, at least, you're talking about a guy who won MVP while Elgin Baylor was still in the league, right? So for me, it's a controversial opinion, another pretty unpopular, but I think Bob Pettit is better than Elgin Baylor, so that's why I put him in the top 20. Okay. Who else could be top 20? Moses Malone. Moses Malone has 3 MVPs, won a ring, dominant rebounder. Especially for offensive rebounds. You're talking about a guy with so much hustle. In his prime, yeah, he'll guarantee a finals trip. I mean, he went to 1981 finals with no other All-Star around him. That's very impressive. So Moses Malone has to be there. He's just dominant center his prime. I see 1983 finals how he basically just dominated Kareem that finals. So yeah, it's impressive. So that's well, one more guy for my top 20. Okay. Here's an interesting guy I'm going to put in the top 20. I think we're done here. Yeah. Another guy I'm going to put top 20 is John Hondo Havlicek. And the reason is because you're talking about a guy who he just exemplified excellence in his career. No negatives really you can point to towards his career. Just 8-0 in the finals, 8 championships. That's a better record than Jordan. Never won an MVP, but he had a finals MVP. Just always did what his team asked him to do. Could score, could rebound, could pass, could defend, do a little bit of everything on the court. Just do whatever his team needed. So Hondo, I guess he gets a little bit lost in the shuffle sometimes. For modern fans, don't really like talk about him, but guy's so versatile. I did a versus series, right, on my YouTube channel where I'm comparing all these guys. And in that video, my first video actually of the series, I compared Hondo to Scottie Pippen, and he's better than Scottie Pippen. I mean, I'm not better, greater than Scottie Pippen. I shouldn't say better, because that's hard to say, but greater than Scottie Pippen, because won more rings, won 2 rings as the alpha dog. Pippen didn't win any rings as the alpha dog. Could score better offensively, just as good defensively. So yeah, you're talking about a guy who's, most people put Pippen ahead of him, but I don't think they should, because I think Hondo's better than Pippen, or greater than at least. His career, right, 8-0 in the finals MVP, averaged 5 more points than Pippen did, rebounded just as well, assisted just as, passed just as well, point forward, and defended just as well. So I think Hondo deserves to be up there in top 20. Okay, so that's top 20. Not that hard. The rest of this is going to be harder. So, what happened to my 61 and... Oh, that's weird. Huh. That's weird. Okay, let's put this... Disappeared. Okay, 6170 here. I don't know what happened there. Should go right about there. Okay. Oh. Okay, fine. Go here. Okay. There. I don't know what happened to that. Okay, there we go. Top 20. Then 30, 40. Okay. Let's look at some of these guys. 21 to 30. Who's 21 to 30? I think Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade is 21 to 30. I mean, just his career, probably for me, he's the 4th best shooting guard of all time after Jordan, Kobe, and West. Took a team to the NBA Finals and won a championship in his 3rd season. Averaged ridiculous numbers in that finals. Definitely can lead the team as the alpha dog, but also be a good beta dog as well, because he won 2 more rings with LeBron. Very good shot blocker. Can't really shoot, but still great slasher. So yeah, D Wade, 3 rings, finals MVP. For me, he's 21 to 30. Point guards. I think John Stockton for me is 21 to 30. I'm not going to say he's the most talented out of all these guys, but talking about his longevity, and he's just so durable, and 15,000 assists, all-time assist leader, all-time steals leader, pretty good defender, good shooter. All that is so hard to beat, right? And if doing it as long as he has done is very impressive. So you put Stockton up there. Just his longevity is probably his most impressive thing. Just night in, night out. Same stats. Who else? Chris Paul, I think. And Chris Paul might actually even be better than John Stockton for me, because this is a guy that's a better scorer than Stockton. He was better offensively than Stockton. Probably better defensively too. So better offensively and defensively. And he can shoot, just like Stockton, and he can pass just as well as Stockton too. So maybe Chris Paul is even better than Stockton, right? Just he's kind of been unlucky in his career, but I think CP3 is just probably better than Stockton, honestly. But he's definitely right up there, 21-30. Who else? Looking at this list here. Nope, shooting guards is fine, I think. Small forwards. Scottie Pippen. This is where I put Scottie Pippen. In the 20-30 range. You got one of the best wing defenders of all time. Guy who can pretty much do everything on the court. And 6-0 in the finals. Yeah, probably the best Robin you can have. So Scottie Pippen deserves to be up there. Also personal favorite, Rick Barry. Rick Barry's a 20-30 player for me. You're talking about a guy who was a lights out scorer, ridiculous. Like offensively, he was just ridiculous. Would give you he led ABA in scoring, NBA in scoring. His second season averaged 35 points a game, averaged 41 points in the finals against Wilt Chamberlain. It's pretty ridiculous stuff. And led a team to a ring, 1975, with no other All-Star on his team. And beat the Bullets. The Washington Bullets had 2 Hall of Famers, right? Weston Sullivan and Elvin Hayes. He beat them with no other All-Star on his team, averaging 36 and 6. So Rick Barry deserves his due. He's a great player. Point forward, pass really well. Just super competitive. Not a good person, but he's super competitive as a player. You got to put him up there. And then Elgin Baylor, of course. Elgin Baylor and Rick Barry pretty close. I did a comparison of these two in a versus video. Pretty close. I put Rick Barry a little bit higher, but it's pretty close. Elgin Baylor is just a lights out scorer as well. Just crazy scoring stats. 71 points in the game. He averaged 38 points in the game before. 18 rebounds while part-time on military leave. That's ridiculous. He averaged 13.5 rebounds a game. It's crazy numbers. So, yeah, Elgin Baylor has to be up there. Unlucky player, though. Went to 8 finals, never won anything. I think just because unlucky, and just because Bill Russell's so clutch. Bill Russell and Sam Jones are so clutch, man. Yep, that's for small forwards. And power forwards. Yes, Charles Barkley. If you're talking about primes, Charles Barkley's probably better than Karl Malone. Probably better than Karl Malone in his prime. Right. You got a guy who could put up 25 points, 12 to 14 rebounds, about 45 assists a game in his prime. And he's ridiculously efficient. So, run the ball up the court, just pretty much unstoppable, actually. Even if you're talking about the 93 series where Jordan won and averaged 41 points that finals, Barkley still did really well, right? People don't talk about that, but Barkley still did really well that finals. So he's just ridiculous in his prime. Just offensive machine, rebounding machine. Charles Barkley has to be up there. All right, Kevin Garnett I think has to be in the top 30. So I think KG, offensively obviously not as good as Karl Malone or Charles Barkley, but defensively he was better, right? Defensively, probably just as good as Tim Duncan, right? Pretty close between him and Duncan defensively. Duncan had the better offense and the better basketball IQ by margin, I think, because KG, the thing is, he's a great player, and he just can't lead a team by himself like Duncan could. Duncan 2003 led a team with no other All-Stars on it. We just had a rookie Tony Parker, Steven Jackson. That was it. And he beat prime Kobe and Shaq, and then he nearly put up a quadruple double in the finals, right? And he won that. No other All-Star on that team that season. KG went to the Western Conference Finals in 2004 with no other All-Star. Well, actually he did. Yeah, Sam Cassell is an All-Star. But anyways, the farthest he could really bring a team is the Western Conference Finals, right? Whereas Duncan actually won the championship. So that's really the difference between the two. But still, KG, good passer as well for his size, so has to be top 30, I think. Right, great defensively. guy you would love to have is your second or third best player, but probably not your first best player. And then David Robinson, I think, has to be here. Talking about the Admiral. Yes, David Robinson, because in his prime, again, just like KG, not the type of person you can win a championship as your main guy, but as your second or third best guy, yeah. I mean, because you pretty much, him and KG are both really good defensively. Hard to say who's better. Robinson, probably along with Hakeem, probably on that level defense. And KG is also really good. Defense, they're all pretty good. Offense, he's better than KG, right? I mean, in his prime, D-Rob was giving you 30 points a game, 71 points before, right? Quadruple double, like, just pretty ridiculous guy on offense in his prime. Just not quite the type of guy you can really win a ring with as your main guy, but as your second guy, right? With Duncan leading the team as your second guy, yeah, he'll win you a ring. So, yeah, D-Rob has to be there. The Admiral. Now, this is a guy who I think is very underrated, and I've always thought he's underrated, is Artis Gilmore, because we're talking about ABA achievements too, right? So I count ABA achievements too. And in my comparison video, I did a comparison video between David Robinson and Artis Gilmore. Yeah, David Robinson's better, but Artis Gilmore's pretty close. And Artis Gilmore in the ABA was dominant, just like David Robinson was. Offensively, he wasn't as good as David Robinson, probably more like Kevin Garnett, but defensively, he probably wasn't as good as David Robinson or Kevin Garnett either. But he was close. He was still really good defensively. So yeah, Artis Gilmore also won a championship as the main guy. So I know Dan Issel was the main scorer in the 75 Colonels, but Artis Gilmore was the main guy. He won the Finals MVP. He was averaging like, what, 22 and 23 that game or something like that? Something ridiculous. 25 or 23. Yeah. 25 points, 23 rebounds a game is basically what he averaged that finals. So that's pretty crazy stats. So Artis Gilmore is very underrated. If you count his ABA achievements, he's a top 30 player, and top 5 in rebounds all time too. Really good rebounder. So yeah, top 40. So we did top 30. Now who's in top 40? Walt Frazier. Walt Frazier is really underrated too, I think. Just got the offense, got the defense. One of the best defensive perimeter players ever. But can also help you in the clutch. And I chose Walt Frazier for my all-time team in the draft too. I just think he's kind of like a mini, not as good as Jerry West on offense, but he'll give you everything else. He'll give you the passing, he'll give you the defense. Shooting, he's okay as well. He'll give you everything except for he's not as good as West on the scoring, but everything else he'll give you. So it's fairly complete. So Walt Frazier just does a little bit of everything on the court, and also comes up clutch just like Jerry West. So also always good to have someone that's good in the clutch. Okay, I think Bob Cousy also, because I know this is again just like Bob Pettit. Not saying he can play today, but you're talking about his era. You're talking about a guy who led the league in assists 8 times, 6 championships, an MVP, and just obviously clearly the best point guard of his era. Right? It's not even close. The second player is not even close. Bob Davies. I mean, who else? Dick McGuire. I mean, those guys are not even close to Bob Cousy, right? You're talking about someone who clearly was the best point guard of his era. So anytime you have that kind of dominance, yeah, that's tough. At least top 40, yeah. I think top 40 all time. Isaiah Thomas has to be here. I know this might be lower than some people, because some people might put Isaiah Thomas higher than John Stockton, which is fine. I'm okay with that, but for me, he's a little bit lower, maybe. He doesn't have the longevity of Stockton. He's a better player than Stockton, I think. But overall, his career, he has the rings, right? He has 2 rings, and he has a Finals MVP. He was the leader of the Bad Boy Pistons. He's a better scorer than Stockton. And passing is very similar as well. But he didn't have Stockton's longevity, so I have to base this on the entire career. He did have the rings, but he didn't have the longevity. And probably he wasn't a good shooter. Stockton was a better shooter. Defensively, Stockton may have been a little bit better. I mean, Stockton made all defensive teams. Isaiah did not. So that's how I base my decision. I know Isaiah has the rings, but he also had a really good team around him. Stockton was a better shooter, way better longevity, way more durable, maybe slightly better passer, maybe slightly better defensively. That's how I'm judging it. But yeah, Isaiah, very close to top 30, I think, but maybe just outside top. Same with Frazier and Kuzi. I think these guys are all pretty close. Talking all time. Whoops. How did I get another? Oh. This guy. Oh. Okay, there. Alright. Who else? I think Jason Kidd could also be top 30 to 40. Yep, Jason Kidd, because just like the rest of these guys, I think these guys are all very close to each other. Jason Kidd led his team to 2 finals, right? New Jersey Nets to 2 finals. I think he was the only All-Star that on those teams. I think he was the only All-Star. I don't think Kenyon Martin was an All-Star. Really good defensively, right? On ball, he's a great defensive player. Could do a little bit of everything. Score, pass, rebound. He wasn't a great shooter. So he scoring was not his main point. Like his same with probably even Stockton was a little bit better, but yeah, neither of these guys were really good scorers, honestly. But yeah, for rebounding, passing, defense, Jason Kidd had it. So you can just think of him like Oscar Robertson, except without the scoring. Without the scoring of Oscar Robertson, then you have Jason Kidd. If you take Oscar Robertson, you take away the scoring, you have Jason Kidd, which is still good enough for top 40. All right. Shooting guards. I think Allen Iverson. Yeah. Allen Iverson. You talk about a guy who's 5'11", led the league in scoring 4 times, and averaged, 26, 27 points a game for his career, 29 points a game in the playoffs. I mean, this guy, and he played a lot of minutes per game. I know the reason is because he shot a lot, but he's not a good shooter. Just he missed a lot of shots. He's not very efficient. But, I mean, the guy had heart, man. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's that small, but he played he gave you 44 minutes a game. And then he gave you 30 points a game. That's crazy. Just his motor, man. His motor is just amazing. So, I know Iverson never won a championship. Probably not the best team player, but I just gotta have him up here because he did so much for what he was, right? Gotta give him credit for that. He did so much for what he was. So, who else? Elvin Hayes, I think. Yeah. Elvin Hayes is here. And I think the thing about Elvin Hayes is, I mean, you're talking about a guy, I didn't realize this until recently, but Elvin Hayes was the only All-Star in the 1978 Bullets. So Bob Dandridge wasn't an All-Star, Weston Seld wasn't an All-Star, only Elvin Hayes. So he's one of the few players that won a championship without another All-Star on his team that season. Right. I mean, obviously, Unsel's a Hall of Famer. Bob Dandridge should be a Hall of Famer. But, yeah. I mean, talk about a guy who could really score, rebound well. Biggie. Yeah. Definitely the best power forward of the 70s. So, deserves to be there. I forgot Dirk is actually there as well. So, Dirk is top. So, the thing is, a lot of people probably have Dirk actually in the top 30. Or even top 20 even. But for me, I rank Dirk a little bit lower. Probably around the same level of Elvin Hayes, and I'll have a video comparing these two actually. I think people really looked at Dirk's career after the 2011 finals, and his career really went the other way, because until 2011, Dirk was actually known to be a perennial choker in the playoffs. If you look at 2006, look at 2007, where he was the first seed in the MVP, and he lost to the We Believe Warriors. So, lost to Baron Davis and Monta Ellis. Until 2011, he was actually not very good in the playoffs. And then 2011 came along, he was really good in the playoffs, right? And he swept Kobe, he beat the OKC Big Three, obviously beat LeBron in the finals, right? The Big Three, Miami Heat. I think that's what kind of resuscitated his career. But I don't know. I think he could be. I mean, yeah, he could be in top 30. But who would I even take out? You know, I mean, there's so many good players here. So yeah, I mean, it'll be tough to really take anyone out for Dirk. I think Dirk is definitely top 40 player, and he's probably like fringe top 30 even. And what can I say? The thing is about Dirk is he's a really good atypical power forward because he's a shooting big man, right? He's a really good shooter for his size, and that one-legged fadeaway is almost unblockable. But for his other, you look at the other facets of his career, like rebounding is a little bit below average for his size. Honestly, he's a 7-footer, only got like 8 rebounds a game. Like Garnett got way more. Garnett's the same size as him, and like Garnett's a way better rebounder than Dirk is. Passer, right? Garnett's also a way better passer than Dirk is. So, and defensively, right? Defensively, Garnett's a lot better. So, the thing is, Dirk is a lot better scorer than KG, okay? That's really the only thing he's better than KG at, is scoring. So he's better than KG at scoring and shooting. But when it comes to rebounding, passing, defense, he's not as good as KG. So that's why KG has to be ahead of Dirk for me. KG is just more complete. Does way more. Dirk, really, he'll give you that shooting big man touch. Really, that's it. He's a big man that can shoot, but then, you know, he's not like KD. KD's also 7 foot, but think of KD as just like, he's Dirk, but with much more volume, right? And a lot more mobile, right? So think of it that way, right? Dirk is basically like a KD that's not as mobile, right? So that's what I think. They're both 7 foot. They can both score. They can both shoot. But KD just does it with way more volume and is more mobile and athletic, right? So I think of it that way. Anyways, Dirk is in my top 40. He's actually very close to Alvin Hayes for me. I'll have a video comparing these two later on. But some people might be angry at me for that. I mean, they probably have Dirk like way higher than this. But for me, yeah, I think Dirk and Alvin Hayes are actually pretty close. If you got to look at Alvin Hayes more, Alvin Hayes was really good. And also led his team to a championship as the only All-Star. Dirk wasn't the only guy to do it, okay? I mean, 2011 Mavs, yeah, impressive. So was the 1978 Bullets. Okay. Who else? Patrick Ewing, I think. Patrick Ewing used to be up here. His prime, Patrick Ewing, great scorer, great rebounder, great defensively as well, shot blocker. Yeah, pretty much. He's not as good as the Admiral. I don't think he's as good as Artis Gilmore either, or A-Train. But he's just below that level. So, yeah, Patrick Ewing has to be up here, the top 40 all time, I think. Yep, I think, and him and Frazier are pretty close, honestly. If you want to know who's the greatest Knick of all time, him and Frazier are pretty close. Okay, I think George Mikan. This is a very interesting one. So hard to place George Mikan. He's always been the hardest guy to rank. But if you talk about dominance, 5 championships in his era, are clearly the best player of his era, right? I'm talking about a guy who's clearly the best player of the pre-shot clock era. So, yeah, he's completely dominated it. If there were MVPs back then, he would have a lot of them. Or Finals MVPs back then, he would have a lot of them. So, talking about a guy who really dominated his era. I think Kuzi for the point guard position, George Mikan for the big man, really dominated his era. So he has to be top 40. Again, not saying he could play today. I'm not saying any of these guys are necessarily better. It's not the order they were better, just the order in which I think they impacted their era. So yeah, that's why George Mikan's there. Who else? One more guy to round up the top 40. I'm going to go with George Gervin. George Gervin. A guy who didn't win any championships or never even really went to an NBA Finals, but scoring machine. I mean, I'm going to do a video comparing George Gervin and Iverson later on, but him and Iverson are pretty close. They both have 4 scoring titles. They're both just amazing scorers, right, for their size and position. Gervin's obviously a lot more lengthier. He's kind of like a pre-prototype Kevin Durant, very lengthy. Not quite as good as Kevin Durant though, which is why he's down here. But yeah, I think, you know, he's very, very hard to guard in his era, right? Just guy was just a lethal scorer in his era. So Iceman, just on the barely, I think he's probably like number 39 or 40 on this list, towards the end of the 40 list. Yeah, so George Gervin just barely makes it there. Okay, now 41 to 50. Who is in the 49 to 50? Let's see. Steve Nash, right? Steve Nash is, oh, okay. Steve Nash, 2-time MVP. Again, I would say he's like a lesser Stockton. I might do a video comparing him to Stockton, but he's like a lesser Stockton. I mean, obviously Stockton didn't have any MVPs, but Nash is basically Stockton, but he's a better scorer, I think. Stockton, his thing is he's very limited on offense. I think Nash could have been a better scorer. He just didn't take as many shots because he was so unselfish. If he took more shots, he'd be a much better scorer. But yeah, great passer, obviously. Great shooter. Couldn't really rebound. The reason I have him below Kidd, couldn't really rebound, never went to an NBA Finals, and really not good defensively. So that's why I have him down below Kidd. But I think he's definitely top 50. So yeah, Steve Nash goes there. And no, he did not rob Kobe of any MVPs, okay? MVPs have always just been based on best player and best team. So, all right. James Harden, I think, has to be up here. And why does, oh, it's because of my keyboard. So James Harden, best scorer of his era, probably. I think it's hard between him and Durant. KD and Harden, who's a better scorer, I don't know. It's pretty close. The thing about KD, though, is that, you know, he kind of like, he's a really good shooter, and he's probably harder to guard than James. It's just that James Harden uses, you know, he uses the modern NBA rules to his advantage, and he gets a lot of points based on that. But anyways, props to him. James Harden's like, he's a lethal scorer, man. He scored like 36 points a game, like in 2019 or something. So using those kind of rules, it's almost impossible to stop this guy, right? And then if you're talking about like leading the league in assists, right? He's also a really good passer as well. And who knows, he might even win a ring this year. So far, he's one of the best players never to win one run, but he might win one this year because he's with the Nets with KD. So, so yeah, he might actually win one. They both might win one this year. We'll see. But yeah, for now, as of not quite the end of the season yet, not quite the end of the 2021 season yet, I'm gonna put James Harden in the top 50. He'll definitely move up if he has a ring. But yeah, guy's an MVP, multiple scoring titles. So yeah. I think that's it for here. Small forwards. Kawhi Leonard has to be top 50. I mean, this is because my keyboard has an issue right now. There. It always accidentally presses the button. I gotta replace my keyboard. Yes, Kawhi Leonard has to be in top 50. Well, you're talking about a guy who's really good defensively. Might be the best defender of his era. One of the best wing defenders of all time. 2 Finals MVPs, right? One was just for guarding LeBron, which I don't know. I think Tim Duncan could have also got that one. But anyways, definitely he won one very legitly, which is 2019. Where the 2019 playoffs, he was just on fire, right? And they beat Curry in the finals, and Klay Thompson was there for most of the games. So, you gotta give Kawhi his credit, man. Like, he beat the Golden State Warriors dynasty. So, definitely very impressive that 1 year in Toronto. So Kawhi is, as a two-way player, yeah, he's one of the best of his era. So he's definitely top 50. Okay. Who else is in the top 50? I think I went through all these guys already. Oh. My stupid keyboard. Okay. Willis Reed, I think. Yeah, stupid keyboard, okay. Nope. Okay, Willis Reed. Reason why he's top 50. He's not, I don't think he's quite as good as Patrick Ewing. I also don't think he's quite as good as Walt Frazier in terms of his impact. But, I mean, he was a captain of the Knicks in the 70s. He led them to 2 championships. He was an MVP. He has 2 finals MVPs. Now, I don't think he actually deserves one of his finals MVPs. I think Walt Frazier should have got one. But, so yeah, Willis Reed, I think definitely top 50. Just based on his accomplishments, leading the Knicks to 2 championships, is an MVP, 2 finals MVPs. I mean, that's enough for, that's top 50 material, right? And another guy, probably not a lot of people know him, but I did a comparison between him and Willis Reed, and he actually won the comparison in my Versus video, which is Mel Daniels. So Mel Daniels, not very well known because he played pretty much his whole career in the ABA, but I mean, compared to Willis Reed's accomplishments, it's pretty close. He has 3 rings, 2 MVPs in the ABA, all-time leading rebounder of that league. Pretty much a dominant center of that league until Artis Gilmore showed up. So yeah, he was the premier center of that league for like half its existence, right? Until Artis Gilmore showed up, Mel Daniels pretty much dominated it. So definitely top 50. I mean, yeah, led the Pacers to 3 championships, right? And 2 MVPs. 3 rings and 2 MVPs is the same as Curry, if you think about it. So Mel Daniels has to be there. And I do count ABA awards the same. So yeah. All right. Who else? We got 5 guys left for top 50. Okay. Who else? Who else am I missing here? Russell Westbrook. I think Russell Westbrook could be top 50. Yeah. Come on. Okay, thing about Russell Westbrook, although he hasn't won anything yet, just, you can't deny the guy's talented. I mean, he'll give you triple doubles. I think he's actually the triple double leader right now over Oscar Robertson, which is very impressive. He averaged triple double for 3 seasons, winning MVP one of the seasons. So I think he averaged a 30-point triple double and 1 MVP that season. Just amazing all-around player, right? Very talented, could score, not a good shooter, but he could definitely score, give you rebounds, give you assists. Yeah, just his style of play hasn't won him anything, but just based on talent alone, I think he's top 50. Based on some of his records are pretty hard for people to break, I think. So anyways, Russell Westbrook, I think I'll put him top 50. And who else? I think I got most of these guys. Dolph Schayes, I think, could be top 50, yeah. So Dolph Schayes, again, guy I played in the 50s, but second best power forward of that era after Bob Pettit. Give you 18 points, 12 rebounds a night. Really interesting thing is the guy was like 12-time All-NBA. Anytime you have a guy that's 12-time All-NBA, that's top 50 material. I mean, clearly people thought that he was the best for his era for, quite a long time. So, yeah. Anyways, 12 All-NBA selections. 12, okay? I mean, Curry only has 5, so think about that. Well, probably 6 now after the season, but still, think about that. 12 All-NBA selections. I'm talking first and second team, right? They didn't have third team back then. You got to be top 50 with that kind of accomplishment, right? Yeah. Oh, damn my keyboard. All right. Kevin McHale, I think, could be. Well, did I leave anything out? No. Okay. Yeah, I think Kevin McHale could be. I mean, you're talking about, and yeah, this is just my. I hate that my keyboard automatically hits the V button. Okay. Kevin McHale, yeah, top 50 all time. Because, I mean, you're talking about one of the most dominant post scorers of all time, right? Just great defensive player, very short prime, but in his prime, he was virtually unstoppable. I mean, the guy, once you got the ball in the post, you were done. I mean, he'll just fake you out, move in, gives you like 60% efficiency. Like, guy's one of the best post scorers of all time. So I think Kevin McHale's top 50. Now another guy I think actually moved into the top 50 last year is Anthony Davis. So Anthony Davis, I think, moved top 50, won a ring last year as the second best player after LeBron. Very close between him and McHale. Actually, might do a comparison between him and McHale. Different players, but Anthony Davis, better shooter, rebound better probably. Scoring wise, they're different, but AD has some moves in the post as well. Defensively, AD might be a little bit better, but they're both pretty good defensively. So, anyways, I think they're both top 50 all time. AD just moved into it after last year. Now that he has a ring as the second best player, yeah, I mean, guy can score, rebound, defend, maybe shoot, pretty good. All right, one more guy. I think my last pick for, yeah, one more player for the top 50. Who's my number 50 pick? I think I'm going to pick Dwight Howard. I know this might be a surprise to some people. What, Dwight Howard? How could you pick Dwight Howard? You know, I thought he's soft. He doesn't have any moves. The thing about Dwight Howard is he didn't need to have any moves. He was so athletic, and he just, based off of that athleticism, he was able to dominate. Obviously, I'm not saying he's as good as like some of these other guys, but yeah, defensively, one of the best defensive players of his era, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, led league in rebounding 5 times, blocks 2 times, 5 or 6-time All-NBA, I think. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who dominated his era just based off his athleticism. Obviously, his offensive moves, he's not very polished. He doesn't have the footwork, doesn't have much polish on the offense, but just based off of his athleticism, he was able to dominate. So, and take a team to the NBA Finals, right? So, yeah, I think Dwight Howard has to be there because prime Dwight Howard was actually really good in his era. So, yep, I think that's my top 50. That's my top 50. Okay. Let us go to the rest, which is actually going to be pretty hard. Okay, what's 50 to 60? 50 to 60, who could go there? Now, the guy who's really close to actually top 50 is Gary Payton. I think he's very close. Maybe just outside the top 50, Gary Payton is. Because, I mean, he's really good defensively, obviously. One of the best defensive perimeter players ever, but his offense is a little bit lacking, especially compared to like a guy like Walt Frazier, right, who had the defense and the offense. Payton's offense was a little bit lacking, but still all-time great point guard. Maybe just outside of my top 50, but Gary Payton has to be here. Yeah, great defensive player, decent on offense, but just not that good, right? And just he didn't have some of the other accomplishments that these other guys had. Right, because he got a ring, but he was not the best player. He was just kind of on the tail end of his career. So yeah. All right, who else? I think that's it for the point guards. Okay, shooting guards. I think you can make a case for Sam Jones. Reason why is this guy's 10 rings. That's obviously like second most after Bill Russell, and he's a huge part of it too. If you look at Sam Jones' stats, the guy always came through in the clutch. Very, very clutch player. And I mean, in his prime, he was giving me like 24 points, 25 points a night. So yeah, if you're talking about guys, probably third best shooting guard of the 1960s. So yeah, I mean, just based off of how well he's done in the postseason, like he always comes up clutch when it matters, and he'll give you the points when you need it. So yeah, Sam Jones, I think, definitely deserves to be there. Might even had a Finals MVP if they had him back then. Who else could be top 60? I think that's it. Yep. Okay, small forwards. Paul Reason, top 60 player. Talking about a guy who's a 10-time All-Star, was the best player for one of his championship teams, which is the 1955 Warriors, which, by the way, it's weird because Golden State doesn't retire his number, even though they hang the rafters in the stadium. So weird, right? They hang the 1955 Warriors banner in the stadium, but they don't retire his number for some reason. He's the best player on that team, so it's so weird. It's two-time scoring champion, one of the best scorers of his time, right? I'm talking about 1950s. One of the best scorers of his time, of his era. Pitching Paul Arizin. Yeah, top 60 player, I think. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about, like, if you actually look at the video of the top NBA's 50 greatest players celebration, I don't agree with necessarily all of their selections, but yeah, this guy was definitely there on one of them. But of course he gets pushed down because now there's a few more better players than him, right? Okay, so that was small forwards. Who else could be here? I think... Oh, Connie Hawkins could be here. Yep. So Connie Hawkins, again, I did this in my comparison video of my Versus series, but so the reason why people don't know about Connie Hawkins is he didn't get to play in the NBA until he was after his prime. So yeah, I mean, he just never really got a chance until he was after, like, he got maybe like 2 or 3 years of his prime in the NBA, and that was about it. He played most of his prime, he was playing in the ABA, which he actually dominated. So he dominated the ABA. He won a ring and a Finals MVP and an MVP in the first year, I think. The first year he played with the Pittsburgh Pipers or the Minnesota Pipers. He won a ring, Finals MVP, and MVP. So just dominated that league. And then after he came to the NBA, he was good for like 2 or 3 years. I think his first year in the NBA, he took the Suns to the Western Conference second round of the finals, and then he actually took the Lakers to 7 games. I'm talking about the Lakers with Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor. He took that stacked team to 7 games, pretty much just by himself, right? And this guy could give you like 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists in his prime. So Connie Hawkins, people don't understand how good he was in his prime. Like, he had a very short prime, very short career. I did a comparison between him and Billy Cunningham. He won. But yeah, people don't realize how good he was in his prime. Like, man, just, if only he played his entire prime in the NBA, wasn't unfairly blackballed, right? Like, but still, I put him in the top 60 just based off his ABA and NBA accomplishments. Very underrated player. All right, similarly underrated, I will have to say George McGinnis. So George McGinnis, Big Mac. Just did a video on him and Giannis, where Giannis won. But yeah, McGinnis he was dominant in the ABA. I mean, talking about a guy who put up like 25 to 30 points a game, 11 to 14 rebounds a game, and 46 assists a game. Like, just giving up like Giannis LeBron numbers in the ABA, right? I think in the finals he was averaging like 30 points, 16 rebounds, and 8 assists or something like that. Like, it's just crazy. And then after he came to the NBA in the 76ers, he wasn't as good, but still putting up like 20, 11, and 4 a game. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy he just did a little bit of everything on the court. And very underrated because he didn't really win anything in the NBA. He won 2 rings in the ABA. But people don't really look at the ABA. He's one of the best Pacers players ever. Very athletic, strong, just, yeah. His injuries, he didn't take care. I think it's because he like most of the players from the 70s, they just would, like if they're athletic, they rely too much on their athleticism and they don't bother to take care of their bodies. So he really declined quickly after he was like 30 or 31 after that. He just really declined quickly. He was out of the league very fast. So that's why people don't really remember him, but he was a dominant player in his prime. All right, of course, I did the comparison between him and Giannis. So yeah, Giannis has to go next. Yep, top 60 player all time. You're talking about a guy who's a two-time MVP, still in his prime, could do everything on the court just like McGinnis. Score, rebound, pass, defend, right? Guy who pretty much do everything on the court. Very versatile. Just didn't reach the NBA Finals yet. Hasn't done as well in the postseason, but I think he'll definitely get there. He's still in his prime, right? So he'll definitely get there. But yeah, still top 60 for me. If he goes to the NBA Finals, wins the championship, he'll definitely move up a lot more. But Giannis definitely, just like McGinnis, very dominant player. Another guy who I think should be top 60 is Dan Issel. And I did a comparison between him and Patrick Ewing, actually. Which a lot of people actually thought was disrespectful to Ewing. I didn't think it was disrespectful. Obviously, Ewing's better. But Dan Issel is actually pretty good as well. People don't understand. He played most of his prime in the ABA, but guy was really crazy scorer in his prime. Yep, give you like 25, 28 points a night. It's okay rebounder as well, decent rebounder. But yeah, mostly scoring. As a scoring center, he was one of the first. Him and Bob McAdoo, which by the way, I'm going to put Bob McAdoo in here as well. Yeah, him. Bob McAdoo, him as well. So yeah, him and Bob McAdoo, very prototype big man scorers. So yeah, Bob McAdoo also in my top 60. I mean, talk about a guy in his prime who really dominated. Give you 30 points. I think he actually averaged 34 points. 3 scoring titles, 34 points. Like a guy who's a prototype shooting big center. Man, Big Mac will give you that. And he'll also give you like 10, 11 rebounds a game too. So in his prime, Bob McAdoo was really good. It's just he didn't win a championship until his later years, playing with the Lakers as a backup. But in his prime, McAdoo was dominant and Dan Issel was dominant. So yeah, top 60. And I'm also going to put Dave Cowens, of course, because that's the one I did a comparison with McAdoo on. Yeah, Dave Cowens deserves to be in top 60. Okay, so Dave Cowens, guy who never won a Finals MVP, but probably maybe should have won one. I mean, just all-time hustle player. It wasn't like really great scorer or anything. He definitely could score, but not your primary offensive option. But he could rebound. Man, he could rebound. He'd give you 13 rebounds, 14, 15 rebounds a game. With all that hustle, he really, I think if you people look at the 1974 Finals against Kareem's Bucks, Dave Cowens out-rebounded Kareem. I mean, Kareem's 7'2", right? Dave Cowens 6'9". But Dave Cowens had the hustle, so he just out-rebounded Kareem. He could also pass better too. He averaged like 3.8 assists a game. Guy could pass, could rebound. An MVP, right? 1 MVP, 2 rings, right? So. Yeah, I mean, Dave Cowens has to be up here, top 60. I think he's not quite as good as Willis Reed, but maybe just below Willis Reed. He's a better rebounder than Reed, but Reed was probably a better scorer. So, anyways, just a notch below Daniels and Reed, I think. Yeah, Dave Cowens, top 60. Okay, one more guy. Who else? It's interesting because I think it's getting really hard now. Who else could be top 60? I'm gonna go with. Oh, it's getting actually really hard. Okay, this is interesting, but again, it's the career versus prime thing. I might actually do a video on this later on, right? Like, should I judge based on career or on primes? But I think Bill Walton has an argument. and the reason is I know his career is very short. His career is very short, because he's plagued by injuries. But if you're talking about what he did in his prime, it's equivalent to some of what these guys did in their entire careers, right? I mean, in this guy's prime, he won an MVP, Finals MVP, championship for a Blazers team that was honestly the underdog team. So, I mean, they're facing McGinnis in the finals and Dr. J, and they come from 2-0 down. So, Walton just kind of did everything on the court in his prime. He's polished scorer, rebounds really well, he can pass really well, one of the best big man passers, and he can defend really well. So he just pretty much did everything on the court you would want him to do in his prime. He's just, his career was short. That was it. But in his prime, he just did everything on the court. So if you're just talking about his prime, he did as much as what these guys did in their entire careers. So I think that's enough to actually put him in the top 60. So yeah, I'll put Bill Walton in my top 60. All right, so top 70 now. Who's in my top 70? Okay. Point guards. I think I have everyone here. Yep. Okay, so who's going to be in top 70? I think Tony Parker. Tony Parker is my top 70. Yep. I mean, just the guy was a Finals MVP, won 3 championships, actually 4 championships, and second best player for a lot of those Spurs teams. I mean, very, very fast, hard to guard because he's so quick. He'll get you those points when you need it. He'll give you the ball when you need it. Just pretty good player. Just not up to this level, but still a good player. And yeah, just a good second, third guy on your team. I think Tony Parker's there. All right. Shooting guards. Hal Greer. Yep. Hal Greer, probably along with Sam Jones. I'd put Sam Jones a little bit higher because, he has the championships, but honestly, you can make a case for Hal Greer in the 60s as well, because the guy was All-NBA second team like 7 times, which means he was the second best shooting guard in the 60s for most of his career. All-time leading scorer for the 76ers. Pretty impressive. Yeah, guy who gives you like 20 points, 24 points a night pretty consistently. Had a pretty steady, consistent jump shot. Rebound and pass, okay. Pretty solid at it. So yeah, it's a good shooting guard, Hal Greer. Underrated, I think. Another guy I put here, Dennis Johnson, I think. Yep, DJ. Not a very good shooter or a scorer, but guy's a really good defender. Can do pretty much everything else. Really, he's just the guy that you would want to have on your team. Just maybe not as the first guy, but just the guy you want to have as your team. And he actually won a Finals MVP when he was with the Seattle SuperSonics. So I might do a comparison between him and Tony Parker later on. But yeah, I think Dennis Johnson has to be here. Better defender than Parker, but Parker was a better offensive player. Both have Finals MVPs. So anyways, top 70. And he's a point guard too. I just put him as a shooting guard because the shooting guard didn't have a lot of guys here. Who else? I guess you can make a case for Ray Allen as well. Although Ray Allen and T-Mac are actually pretty close. I'm actually thinking about doing a comparison between these two too. Okay. Dominique Wilkins, I think, has to be top 70. So human highlight reel will give you 25, 26 points a game. Very good scorer, very athletic. Just didn't win anything, but he didn't really have a stacked team either, so not really his fault. But yeah, just a really good scorer. I mean, guy would give you 25 to 30 points a night, so super athletic. So yeah, Dominique Wilkins there. Billy Cunningham, I think, has to be here. So I did a comparison between him and Hawkins, the guy who could score, rebound really well, pass, could defend pretty well too, I think. So yeah, Billy Cunningham, kind of like a Connie Hawkins, except not quite as good at his peak as Hawkins was, but still, I mean, yeah, give you 20 and 10 tonight. So yeah, I think Cunningham deserves to be here. Won an MVP in the ABA too. So, all right, Kangaroo Kid goes there. I think Paul Pierce. The truth. Paul Pierce. Guy who was the franchise player for Boston for like a decade. Will give you like 23 to 26 a night. Finals MVP. Beat Kobe in the finals. Yeah. I think Paul Pierce deserves, just based on those accomplishments, he's a top 70 player. So he'll definitely get in the Hall of Fame this year. So yeah, Paul Pierce deserves to be there. I think Spencer Haywood deserves to be here. Spencer Haywood is not quite as good as George McGinnis. Didn't have the all-around versatility, but in his prime, he's still pretty dominant. He'll give you 20 and 10 a night. Won an MVP in the ABA. Played his prime in the Seattle Supersonics. Pretty underrated, I think. Most people don't really know who this guy is, but yeah, I mean, he was super strong, like strong bruiser type of guy. Yeah, we'll give you like 20 and 10 a night. I mean, and in the ABA, he actually gave you like 30, I think 30 and like 14 a night. So it's pretty ridiculous numbers in his prime. So most people don't remember him. I also think Jerry Lucas as well. Jerry Lucas is a guy that was a pretty good shooter for his time. I mean, if you're talking about like outside shooters, stretch bigs, he was pretty much the first one. Like before McAdoo, before Jack Sigma, before any of these guys, before Issel, actually. Not as good as Issel or McAdoo when it comes to scoring, but still. Guy that was a pretty ahead of his time shooter, could rebound really well. You're talking about a guy who's probably one of the best top 10 rebounders ever. Averaged 15 rebounds a game for his career. I mean, anyone who averaged 15 rebounds a game, even the 60s was faster paced, I know. But still, who else in the 60s was averaging 15 rebounds a game, right? So, really good rebounder, good shooter, high IQ player, you know, played for the Knicks, obviously won championships for them. That's where I would put Jerry Lucas, sorry. Jerry Lucas, top 70. Pretty close to Jerry Lucas. I'll actually compare these two guys, but Dave DeBusschere as well. Dave DeBusschere and Jerry Lucas pretty close, and they're very different players. So the thing is, Dave DeBusschere, definitely not the offensive player Jerry Lucas was. Not the rebounder he was either. But on defense, the thing is, Dave DeBusschere was one of the best defenders of his era. So, talking about an 8-time All-Defensive player, more than that actually, because All-Defensive wasn't an award until 1969. But yeah, you're talking about a guy who was like made all these All-Defensive teams, way more than any other power forward of his time. Probably was the key to the New York Knicks defense. If you want to talk about the New York Knicks defense, you know they're famous. 1970s New York Knicks were famed for their defense. And who was the centerpiece of that? Dave DeBusschere and Bill Bradley, right? And Walt Frazier, right? Walt Frazier on the perimeter. And then on the wing side, Dave DeBusschere and Bill Bradley. So, yeah. Guy was just a really tough defender. Played you tough every night. Rebounded pretty well. Not as well as Lucas, but still rebounded pretty well. So, yeah, Dave DeBusschere goes there. And then one more spot left. It's going to go to Wes Unseld, I think. Yep. Wes Unseld, guy who really, if you look at his stats, you don't think Wes Unseld has really good stats or anything, but because he's not a scorer. I think the highest he ever averaged was like 14 points a game. He wasn't really a scorer, but or maybe, sorry, not 14 points, like maybe 17 points a game. But yeah, the guy won MVP in his rookie season. Terrific rebounder. I mean, you talk about a guy who's like 6'6", very undersized, but because he had so much hustle, he would often out rebound bigger guys, kind of like Dave Cowens. He wasn't quite as good as Dave Cowens, but still he would rebound just as well as Dave Cowens. Right, he'd give you 14 rebounds a game, 15 rebounds a game. Very good passer, just like Dave Cowens and Bill Walton. Unsold, very good passer. So he'll give you like 4 or 5 assists. One of the best outlet passers ever. Just did everything you needed to do. Doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, but yeah, definitely very key player you would want on your team. And won Finals MVP as well, even though he averaged less than 11 points a game or something like that. He still won Finals MVP. So that shows you how good he was to win Finals MVP despite not impacting the stats sheet that much. So he did all the little things. Just a great team player. All right, 70 to 80. So top 80 players now. Okay, it's a little bit tougher. Every time it gets a little bit tougher. Who is in my top 80 now? Definitely Ray Allen. Yep, he actually could have been in my top 70. Ray Allen, I mean, talking about the guy who's the best shooter before Curry. Clutch, right? We all know what happened Game 6, 2013 Finals. In his prime, he's a good scorer. Right, the Sonics and the Bucks, he was a really good scorer as well in the prime. Yeah, I mean, a solid shooting guard. Probably a great shooter and scorer in his prime. So, yeah, Ray Allen has to be top 80, I think. Tracy McGrady goes right along him. I think I'll do a comparison of these two later on, but T-Mac goes right beside him. I think it's tough to choose which is better because Ray Allen definitely had the better career. But if you're talking about primes, T-Mac definitely had the better prime because T-Mac was giving you 30, 32 points a game in his prime. Super athletic, could rebound and pass better than Allen could. Because T-Mac was giving you 32, 7, and 6 a game in his prime in Orlando. So, but definitely not as good of a shooter as Ray Allen. Not as clutch as Ray Allen is either, but didn't win a championship. But still, in his prime, T-Mac was a beast. So yeah, he's in my top 80. Who else? SFs, okay. James Worthy, I think. Just did a comparison. I did a comparison video between all these guys actually. I think all 4 of these guys I did a comparison of. I'm going to put them all in the same kind of bucket. But yeah, all these small forwards I think is very close to each other. James Worthy, 3rd best player in the Showtime Lakers, led in 3 championships, Finals MVP. Just a great player you want to have on your team. Doesn't take the spotlight, but will give you the points when you need it. Right after him, Roger Brown, who actually won that comparison video. I did a versus video between these two. Roger Brown, again, 3 championships, Finals MVP, dominant at his peak, absolutely unguardable one-on-one. Actually, if you're talking to some of those guys who played against him, he would actually bust up Connie Hawkins and Billy Cunningham in practice in Rucker Park in the 60s. Like, Roger Brown was actually ridiculous one-on-one, right? But in the team game even, right? Always showed up in the playoffs just like James Worthy. Give you like 25, 26 points a night in the playoffs before his injury, right? Yeah, Roger Brown was probably one of the greatest players no one really saw play because he did everything in the ABA, but still, he deserves to be there. Alex English, just lights out shooter, scorer. He'll give you a quiet 26 to 28 points a night. I mean, I put Dominique ahead of these guys because, like, he was just a bit more consistent, but honestly, these guys are all pretty close, right? Yeah, Alex English will also give you that a night. Same thing, Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony also going to be here as well. Did a comparison between these two. And Mello goes here as well. Pretty similar to English and Dominique. I mean, again, guy who'll give you 24, 25, 26 a night. Pretty much that's it, right? If you're just looking for a small forward who can score, a lot of offensive moves, yeah, English and Mello and Adrian Dantley as well. So let me get Adrian Dantley. There. Adrian Dantley too. Oops. Okay, so all three of these guys. Yeah, English, Mello, Dantley, all pretty close to each other. Dantley's the most efficient. He didn't take any bad shots. But you know, like the thing about Dantley is a very interesting one because he would always only take shots really that he could make, which is why he's incredibly efficient. But he would also not want to shoot until he had those kind of shots. So yeah, that's the other thing. That's why Dantley is, a lot of times he became known as kind of an offensive black hole. If he saw a shot he liked, he was always going to take it. If he didn't see a shot he liked, he wasn't going to take it. It's that simple, right? But super efficient wing scorer. Led league in scoring 2 times, right? He'll give you like, again, all these guys will give you like 20, 25 to 28 points a night, right? All right, who else? Let's got 3 more guys. We're talking about top 80. Dennis Rodman probably, because you're talking about a guy who's really good at defense, rebounding, right? Definitely can't score, but we're talking about defense and rebounding. I mean, he'll give you that, right? Dennis Rodman will give you that. So he'll give you like 15, 16 rebounds a game, and he'll give you the defense. That's really all you need. Just a guy who just fulfilled his role really well. And Paul Gasol, I think, is also here. Paul Gasol, I mean, just look at his impact, right? I mean, sure, the guy didn't really go anywhere in Memphis, but once you put him on the Lakers, he takes Kobe right to the finals, right? It wasn't Kobe that took him right to the finals, because Kobe actually, in 2008, sure, he was the MVP, but his stats didn't really look all that different. It actually declined from 2006 to 2007. So it was really the difference maker was Paul Gasol. Like, Paul Gasol took him to the finals, right? Immediately went to the finals after they got Paul Gasol. So it tells you how impactful Paul Gasol was. So definitely a great player. And let's see who else. I mean, if you're talking about based on era, based on what they did in the era, Neil Johnston. Yep. Neil Johnston was second best player of the 1955 Warriors, won 3 scoring titles, fairly efficient for his time. You're talking about 1950s, no one really shot better than 50%. So, actually no one really shot better than 45%. So, Neil Johnston was pretty efficient for his time. And he's 3-time scoring leader, was the best center in the game after Mikan and before Bill Russell. So, second best player in a championship team. It's good enough for top 80. All right, so now top 90. It's tough. Okay, top 90 all time. Let's see. All right, it's tough. It's getting tough every time. Tiny Archibald. And then we have Tiny Archibald here. Guy who led the league in scoring and assists. Yeah, when he was in his prime with the Kings, yeah. I mean, it's just really hard to stop because he was so quick. I mean, he was not very tall, that's why his name is Tiny, but still, very hard to stop because he's so quick in his prime, and also very good passer as well. So Tiny Archibald, I think, was my top 90. Chauncey Billups actually is in my top 92. Gets pretty underrated sometimes, but Mr. Big Shot, good defensive player, will show up when it matters, right? Clutch, and yeah, I mean, he'll give you the ball when you need it. Just a good team player as well. Obviously, a key cog, the main facilitator of those Pistons teams in the mid-2000s. So yeah, I think Chauncey Billups is my top 90. And I think Damian Lillard is also going to be my top 90 too. I think about Damian Lillard, he'll give you the scoring when it matters, clutch, just hasn't really played on a good team, right? Because it's just after LaMarcus left Portland, it's just been him and CJ McCollum. But I mean, you're talking about a guy who could really like get you the points and get you the points when it matters. So that's important. A good shooter too. All right, who else is in my top 90? I think Bill Sharman. Yeah, I mean, again, we're talking about based on the achievements in the era. Bill Sharman was the best shooting guard of his era, basically bar none. Him and Bob Cousy were one of the best backcourts in the NBA, and pretty good shooter for his time, right? We're talking about a time where people shot like 39%. Bill Sharman shot more than 40%, which is good. And yeah, just the best shooting guard of his era. So that has to count for something. So even though it's the 1950s. So yeah, I'm putting him in the top 90. And also won 4 rings too. All right, and after him, I'm gonna put. Let's see. Let's look at my small forwards too. I'm gonna put most of those guys up. Chris Webber. Yep, I think Chris Webber is in my top 90. Chris Webber is one of the best players not in the Hall of Fame. I think everyone knows he's a Hall of Fame snub. A guy will give you 20 and 10 a night. Also give you 4 assists a night too. He's one of the best passing big men ever. So really good passer for his size. Good scorer, rebounder, in the post. Good player as well. So yeah, Chris Webber I think deserves to be here as well. Just it's really sad the Kings, what happened in the 2002 series. I mean, they were so close to winning. But anyways, yeah, I definitely think Chris Webber doesn't really get his due, but I think he's a top 90 player. I might actually do a comparison between him and Paul Gasol. I think they were pretty close. I think I ranked Paul Gasol just a little bit higher because of the 2 rings. But if you're talking about talent-wise, I think Chris Webber might actually be better. Overall resume, because Webber had an injured career, Gasol probably had the better career. All right, yeah, next is Tom Heinsohn. Tom Heinsohn, you people know about him. He won 8 rings in 9 seasons, which is the highest ring to season ratio ever. He's a really good player in the playoffs. He's not a good shooter or anything, but in the playoffs, he'll actually put up the points when he's needed. I think if you look at some of those playoff series that Boston had, you notice that Tom Heinsohn is actually the leading scorer in a lot of them. Like Sam Jones might lead some of them, John Havlicek might lead some. Tom Heinsohn leads some other ones where he was actually the top scorer on the team. I think in the 1957-58 finals, he might have been the best scorer on the team. So, I mean, Bill Russell obviously is the best player, but he wasn't the best scorer on the team, right? I think Tom Heinsohn was actually the best scorer in a lot of those championship teams. So, gotta give credit. Tom Heinsohn is definitely one of the best power forwards of his era. 8 rings in 9 seasons. I mean, and a 4-time All-NBA player too. So, yeah, I think he's top 90. All right, who else after that? I think Dikembe Mutombo. You're talking about a guy who didn't really have, just like Dennis Rodman, didn't have the offensive skills, but really good in defense. Right, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, great shot blocker, great rebounder. Dikembe Mutombo has to be there. So I'm putting him in top 90. And also I'm going to put Nate Thurmond. I think he's very close to Mutombo. Might do a comparison between these two later on. Nate Thurmond definitely was a better scorer than Mutombo. He averaged 15 points. Mutombo only averaged like 10. But rebounder, also better. He averaged 15 rebounds a game. He averaged 15 and 15 for his career. I mean, come on, that's pretty crazy. Really good defensive player as well. So yeah, these two are pretty neck and neck. I think he's not as he wasn't actually that efficient, even though he scored more. But yeah, neither of these two won any rings. But they're both really good defensive players and good rebounders. So, yep, top 90 all time. Okay, who else? Okay, I'm gonna put Pistol Pete Maravich. Maybe in the top 90. And I think, yep, I think that's a fair spot for him. Pistol Pete Maravich in the top 90. Because I mean, great scorer, right? And a great passer too. Guy who averaged 24, 4 and 5 for his career. Really good stats. Led the league in scoring before. Wasn't like really efficient or anything, but he was a pretty good shooter from 3. Really ahead of his time, I think. Great ball handling. So, yeah, I think Pistol Pete goes here. Didn't win anything, but still, I think just for his skills, his talent, yeah, top 90. And I will put Reggie Miller here as well. Reggie Miller. Oh, come on. Okay, Reggie Miller. Which makes sense to me because he's maybe like one level below Ray Allen. He didn't win a ring like Ray Allen did, but he actually did take his team to the finals. And he was the only All-Star on that team. Jalen Rose wasn't an All-Star. And he's a really good shooter. Just as good as Ray Allen is, probably. Didn't take as many threes as Ray Allen did, but he's just as good as a shooter. And yeah, tough, competitive. You can put Reggie Miller up there, top 90. All right, and now the 100. Who is in the top 100? Tough. I'm gonna put. Pretty tough. I'm gonna put Mitch Richmond. Mitch Richmond's very underrated. He's actually a really good player. Just because he played on some bad teams in his prime, but I mean, he actually did win a ring with the Lakers, but it was after his prime. I think it was his last season, actually. But in his prime, you talk about Run TMC, and then you talk about the Kings. Yeah, he just wasn't on. Run TMC is pretty good. They just didn't really make it very far in the playoffs. And then in the 90s, he played with the Kings. Just wasn't a very good team. But yeah, guy who's just a really good shooter, very consistent scorer. Pretty underrated, I think. So yeah, I think Mitch Richmond definitely deserves to be a top 100. I think definitely very underrated player. I think he's really, if he was on a better team, I think it just his legacy would be so much better, I think. All right. I actually think him and Reggie Miller are pretty close. He might actually be in the top 90, maybe with Miller. All right, Sidney Moncrief. With Sidney Moncrief, you're talking about a guy that's not really a great offensive player. He's pretty decent. He'll give you like 15, 16 points a night, 20 points even. But great defensive player. I think anyone who played against Sidney Moncrief know how great of a defender he was. Also very underrated. So, yeah. Leader of those 80s Bucks teams, which actually went pretty far. So, I think Sidney Moncrief deserves to be there. And just right next to Sidney Moncrief, I have to do a comparison between these two guys coming up very soon. But Joe Dumars as well. Joe Dumars, also, just like Sidney Moncrief, will give you 16 to 20 points a night. Very good defender. Except he actually won a ring, or 2 rings actually, and a finals MVP, right, as part of the Bad Boy Pistons. So, even so, I think him and Moncrief are pretty close. Sure, Joe Dumars has more awards. Moncrief maybe just had slightly higher peak. So, yeah. These two are close, though. I'll have to do a comparison video between those two. Pretty close. And I also put David Thompson, I think. David Thompson, I think, is actually pretty close to, yeah, Mitch Richmond, Reggie Miller, Pete Maravich, these guys. I mean, talk about a guy who had a pretty insane prime. He's Michael Jordan's idol, right? basically prototype of Michael Jordan. Obviously not as good, but could very athletic. Um, Before his drug issues, he had actually like he took the Denver Nuggets to the ABA Finals as the best player. Give you 26, 27 points a night in his prime. 73 points in a game, like some ridiculous scoring feats that David Thompson had. And he did it efficiently. Like he's not like taking a whole bunch of shots like Kobe would. Like he actually did these. He got 73 points without a 3-point line very efficiently. So, yeah, very good player in his prime. Just a short career. Actually, very similar to T-Mac in some ways. Just didn't do. Just wasn't the all-around player T-Mac was. All right. Who else I'm gonna put in is Bernard King, which I think mirrors David Thompson in some ways because Bernard King was also an insane scorer in his prime. Like, guy would get you 30 points a night in his prime. Took the Celtics to 7 games as the best player in 1984 Eastern Conference. Yeah, I mean, Bernard King in his prime was something else. The guy was basically unguardable. But just injuries, tore his ACL in his prime. So that's why he isn't ranked as higher as some of these guys. But still, judging based on what he did in his career, has to be at least top 100. So it's Bernard King, and I think I exhausted that list already. Okay, top 20 that list. Okay. Is anyone I actually missed from here? Nope. I think I got A1 here too. Okay, this is very hard. Who else is in the top 100? I got 5 more guys. I'm gonna put Robert Parrish, just based off his longevity, how long he's played. I think he actually played the most games all time in the NBA, and wasn't like a great scorer, but still give you like 16, 17, 18 points a night, and give you 10 rebounds. Yeah, just based off of his longevity and how durable he was. Third best player on his championship teams with the Bird Celtics, right? Yeah, I think he's top 100. Parrish goes there. Bob Lanier, I think, also goes there as well. Guy who didn't win any championships, but was pretty good in his prime. Give you 20-10 a night. He averaged 20-10 for his career. Yeah, just a solid player. Just never really won anything, but he was a very solid player, right? On those Pistons teams and later Bucks teams. Give you 20 and 10 a night and be tough to stop. I'm going to go with Alonzo Mourning as well in the top 100. Zoe will get you also 20-10 a night in his prime. Not quite as much as Bob Lanier will, but he'll still get you 20-10 in his prime. Very good defensively, right? 2 Defensive Player of the Years. I think of him like maybe just a step below Dikembe and Thurmond, but pretty close defensively and better offensively. It's just his career wasn't... I mean, he had a shortened career, right, because of his injuries. But, yeah, like in his prime, he was probably actually better than these guys. But just offensively anyways. Defensively, maybe about the same or lower. But offensively, better than these guys. Just his career wasn't as good, maybe. And then I'll put Ben Wallace as well. So the thing about Ben Wallace is defensively, he's up there with anyone, right? Like defensively, he's up there with any of these guys. And up there with Hakeem, and up there with Dwight Howard, obviously. David Robinson, Dikembe, right? He just didn't have the offense power that these guys had. And I mean, he's obviously the weakest out of all these guys offensively. He only averaged 6 points a game, which is probably why he's not in the Hall of Fame already, like he would have been, but just he averaged only 6 points a game. But great rebounder in his prime. Defensively, 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, one of the best defenders ever. Bit one-sided. I mean, Dennis Rodman gone to Hall of Fame, being kind of like a one-sided player, but one-dimensional player. But I think it's just because of his rebounding skills. 7 rebounding titles kind of helped him. Ben Wallace had a few rebounding titles. I don't think he had 7 though, so that didn't really help him as much. But he will get in the Hall of Fame for sure. He deserves it. One of the best defensive players ever. So Ben Wallace in my top 100. And then who else? I got one more guy. One more guy. Just gonna take a look. I have. Okay. I'm gonna put Walt Bellamy, finish out my top 100. Not people know about him, but averaged 20 points, 13 rebounds for his career. That's got to count for something. I mean, I know he played in the 60s and 70s, but, you know, Bob Lanier is here with 2010, Walt Bellamy with 20 and 13. I'll actually do a comparison between these two, Bob Lanier and Walt Bellamy. Neither of them won any titles, but give you good numbers. So, they'll give you really solid numbers, but just didn't win anything. I'll have to compare those two. But yeah, they're going to be my top 100, I think. All right. Top 100 is finished. 30 guys left, right? 30 guys left. Okay, so 110. Okay. Who's going to go in the 110? Gets harder and harder, geez. Harder and harder. Zelmo Beatty is going to go. Zelmo Beatty is very interesting, very underrated player again, because he played in the ABA. But this guy had finals MVP in the ABA. You might not know. He played for the Utah Stars. He was the best player on that team. Gave you maybe like, not as good offensively as Bob Lanier or Bellamy, but gave you like 16 and 10 a night. And solid player for the Hawks. And obviously the best player for the Utah Stars. So, yeah. Anyways, any guy who's the best player for a championship team deserves to be in the top 110. All right. I'm going to put Nikola Jokic up here as well. I know it's a bit early, but I think he's a really good player. He might win MVP this year. If he wins MVP, he's going to move up. But for now, he's in my top 110. Just a guy who could do everything on the court. He's like a point center. He passes better than any big man I've seen. I mean, he averages 8 or 9 assists a game. That's incredible. The guy's 7 foot tall, right? he can rebound. He can shoot. So Nikola Jokic goes there. I'm also going to take Jack Sigma. Jack Sigma also. Oh, come on. Yep. Jack Sigma, also really good shooter for a big man. His numbers don't look that gaudy, but he'll give you like 18 points, 10 rebounds a game in his prime. Second best player on the Seattle Supersonics team. Well, it's either him or Gus Williams, but yeah, he just got in the Hall of Fame 2 years ago, I think. But yeah, prototype big shooting big man. So Jack Sigma and won a ring, right? It's pretty important. Won a ring as part of the '79 Supersonics, which is kind of a forgotten team. So yeah, okay. Also gonna put Joel Embiid because I think him and Jokic is pretty close. I always go between the two. I'm gonna do a comparison video between these two at some point, but Embiid and Jokic are pretty close. They're very different players. Jokic is a very unique player. Embiid is a more traditional center. Embiid has the back to the basket, post moves kind of guy, good at defense. Jokic, not so good at defense, not so much of a post player, but just very, very unique and versatile. So these two are very close. It's just, yeah, I'm not sure who's better. I'll have to do a comparison. They're both in my top 110 for now, though. Okay, who else? I'm going to pick Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh is third best player on those Miami Heat teams, obviously. Pretty good shooter for his size. He's not really like a traditional big guy. He can shoot. He could rebound fairly decently. Decent scorer as well. Just a solid player, not your best player. He's not going to win anything as your best player, but as a solid like third guy, he'll win your rings. So Chris Bosh, and very close to Chris Bosh. I'm gonna do another comparison between these two guys soon. But Amar'e Stoudemire, who had a shortened career because of his injuries, but was a better post player than Chris Bosh was. Couldn't shoot like Bosh, definitely better in the post. Pretty close between these two. Yeah, Amar'e was better in the post. Bosh was better, maybe a little bit further out. His range was a little bit farther. But both very close. Yeah, they're both in my top 110. And then just keep going with the power forwards. Let's go with Bailey Howell. Bailey Howell, guy from the 1960s who won 2 rings with the Celtics, but had his prime with the Pistons. Give you 18 points, maybe 10 rebounds a night. Solid shooter, pretty efficient. I like to think of him like a mini version of Jerry Lucas. So think of Jerry Lucas right here, right? Great shooter for his era, for his size, great rebounder. Bailey Howell, just like a mini version of Jerry Lucas. Like he could still score well and rebound and shoot fairly well, but just not as good. But still good enough to be in the top 110, I think. So there he is. Bobby Jones. Oh, Bobby Jones, actually. Maybe I should have had him higher. I might have to actually put Bobby Jones higher, actually. Who am I going to put down here, then? Tough. I might put, It's tough. Who would I even put in Bobby Jones? Bobby Jones I kind of missed. I think he should be higher, actually. Oh, it's tough to put any of these guys down here. I'll put David Thompson down here. Put Bobby Jones up here. Sorry, Skywalker. Yeah, Bobby Jones definitely deserves to be top 100. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's 11-time All-Defensive. 11-time All-Defensive and just incredible defensive player. He's not, like, really good on offense, but I think a little bit better than, like, say, Dennis Rodman, better than Ben Wallace, maybe better than Dikembe Mutombo. He's a bit better than those guys, but he's not like, again, just like some of these other defense guys, not really good on offense, but defensively, yeah, he was just key to so many championships. So, I mean, he part of the Nuggets ABA Finals team, and then part of the 83 76ers coming off the bench, winning the title. So important to those teams, right, on the defensive end. So Bobby Jones has to be up here. I think he has to be in the top 100. All right, so Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin is going to go in my top 110 as well. And you might think that's a little bit premature, but honestly, I think it's very close. Between him, Bosh, and Amar'e, it's very close because career-wise, Bosh was the best shooter out of them. Amar'e, probably the best in the post out of all of them. Blake Griffin is the most versatile out of all of them because he can give you like 20, 10, and 4 a night, right? A little bit like Chris Webber, actually, except maybe not quite as good as Chris Webber, but he'll give you 20, 10, and 4 a night, right? He's not as good in the post as Amar'e. He's not as good of a shooter as Bosh, but he's definitely a better passer than those guys are, and he's more versatile. So I think he's roughly around the same. It's kind of like the Embiid versus Jokic thing. They're around the same, but they're very different types of players. All right. So after, who else I have left? I have one more spot. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go with Bob Dandridge. Bob Dandridge is so underrated. Actually, he should be in the Hall of Fame. The thing about Bob Dandridge is third best player on the 71 Bucks. Some people call that one of the greatest teams ever, with Kareem and Oscar. And second or third best player on the 78 Bullets as well, after Hayes and maybe Unsold. Bob Dandridge, he'll give you, in the playoffs, he'll up his game, and he'll give you like 20 to 24 points and like 8-9 rebounds. Like just a solid player, and one of the best forwards of his era. It's just he doesn't get much appreciation, and It's unfortunate he's like a Hall of Fame snub. But he's one that definitely, along with like Weber and Ben Wallace, he's one of the best guys not in the Hall of Fame. Right? He should be in there. And Chauncey Billups as well. But yeah, this guy, very underrated, underappreciated forward. Key part of 2 championship teams. And pretty good defensively too. He just does everything. Very versatile. Alright, so number 120. Oh, top 120. What do you got on my PG list? I'm going to go with Dave Bing. Dave Bing. What do I know about Dave Bing? This guy led the league in scoring once. Averaged 26, 27 points a game in his prime. Pretty decent rebounder and passer. Like, he averaged like something like 25 and 6 for his career, which is pretty good. Yeah, I mean, the guy was just a solid defensive player in his prime, but just didn't really get anywhere with his teams, which is why he's ranked so low. But I think him and Lanier, part of the solid Pistons teams of the 70s. But definitely not as good as Tiny Archibald. Just a step below him, probably. If you're talking about like best point guards of the 70s, it's like Walt Frazier, Tiny Archibald, and then Dave Bing after that. So probably like the third team of the point guards of the 70s. Kevin Johnson is very good. I'm going to put Kevin Johnson here. Before his injury, Kevin Johnson was like second or third best point guard in the league, man. I mean, if you talk about like, okay, so talk about like the early 90s, you got Magic before he retired. Then you got Isaiah Thomas, and then you got Kevin Johnson. I think him, and then Mark Price probably after that. Yeah. Kevin Johnson was a beast in his prime. He'll give you like 20 points a game, 10 assists a game. He would just bust people up, man. So he's down here because his career was, hurt because of injuries. But Kevin Johnson deserves to be in the top 120 players of all time, right? So that's why I'm putting Kevin Johnson. All right, after that, this might be a little bit premature, but I think Luka Doncic as well. Luka Doncic is proving himself to be a really good player. Talking about a guy who took the Clippers to like 6 games, right, last playoffs, pretty much by himself. He didn't have Porzingis. And a guy who will give you 28, 30 points, about 8 to 9 rebounds, also 8 to 9 assists. He'll give you like triple doubles. And he's only in his 3rd season right now. So, yeah, Luka Doncic does a little bit of everything on the court, offensively at least. But I think that's good enough for a top 120, actually. So I think Luka's definitely going to move up in the future, but he's here for now. All right. Shooting guards, let's see. Who else? I think the shooting guards is like the position that's the least stacked. So, small forwards. Gonna go with Grant Hill. Grant Hill, when he was in his prime, did a little bit of everything on the court, kind of like Luka does. Will give you the scoring, give you like 25, 8 and 8 a night. Give you the triple doubles. Right, he'll do a little bit of everything on the court when he was in his prime with the Pistons. Just his career got shortened because of injuries, but Grant Hill in his prime was pretty. He was nasty, so just because of that, he had a really good prime. Just even though it was just 6 seasons, but he also had he played like a pretty decent role in the rest of his career. But yeah, Grant Hill deserves to be there, I think. I'm also going to put Marcus Johnson here. He's a pretty underrated player. Marcus Johnson was first or second best player on those Bucks teams. I mean, talk about Sidney Moncrief. Sidney Moncrief led the mid-'80s Bucks. With the early 80s Bucks, there was actually Marcus Johnson leading them. He'll give you like 22 points, 8 rebounds a night. Pretty solid player for those Bucks teams. Yeah, so Marcus Johnson will actually bust some of those other guys up. And you got a lot of good forwards at the time, right? You got Bernard King, you got Dantley, Alex English. He'll actually bust a lot of them up. So Marcus Johnson is actually really good in his prime. And underrated, and should be in the Hall of Fame too. All right, Um, yeah, Lamar Odom. The thing is, no one on the Suns had anything to do with him. I mean, Amari was out in 2006, I believe. He was out because of injury, so you got Shawn Marion. But Shawn Marion isn't as good. He isn't as tall as Lamar Odom is, so you couldn't really contain Lamar Odom. So I mean, even Shawn Marion's pretty good. Obviously, he's a great player, and I have him ranked ahead of Lamar Odom. But during that series, I could tell that the Suns didn't really have anything to do with Lamar Odom because he was averaging like 19, 11, and 5 in the 2006 playoffs. So. Okay, oh, this is the top 120, right? Who's here? LaMarcus Aldridge, probably, who just retired recently. Marcus Aldridge, I'm going to say he was the best player for Portland for his prime. Give you like 20, 10 a night in his prime. Good, solid player. Great shooter in the mid-range. Didn't win anything, but arguably that's because he didn't stay long enough in Portland. I think he and Dame should have stayed together longer. But yeah, LaMarcus still good enough to be top 120. He was the top forward of his time. And who else? Oh yeah, Ed Macauley. I have Ed Macauley here, right? People don't realize this guy. Who is Ed Macauley? Ed Macauley is a guy who played in the 1950s, but he was actually an above average efficient player for his time. He actually shot like 50% at a time when everyone else was shooting like 40%. He was like the first star for the Celtics. This is before they got Bob Cousy. First star for the Celtics, and then they traded him to St. Louis for Bill Russell. So, yeah. And then he became a pretty good St. Louis player, actually. I mean, Ed McCullough's actually really pretty good. Obviously not as good as Bill Russell, but pretty solid center for his time. Won a chip with the St. Louis Hawks, led by Bob Pettit, Cliff Hagan, and Ed Macauley. By the way, speaking of Cliff Hagan, I think Cliff Hagan should have been here as well. Again, another guy who played in the 1950s and second best player in those St. Louis Hawks teams that made the finals 3 times. Actually 4 times, I think. It was 57 where they lost to the Celtics, 58 they won because Russell was injured, but still they won. 61 and 62, I believe. They went to the... No, sorry, 60 and 61, they went to the finals. Yeah. So that Hawks team, that St. Louis Hawks team of the late 50s and early 60s was actually a dynasty. So yeah, Bob Pettit, Ed Macauley, and Cliff Hagan were key to those teams. So yeah, Cliff Hagan gave me like, 17 and 6 a night probably. Very similar to Cliff Hagan, I might do a comparison sometime, is Chet Walker. Chet Walker, I'm going to say about him, he was the 3rd best player on the 67 76ers, who that team won 68 games, considered one of the greatest teams of all time. Then after that, he went to the Chicago Bulls, where he was part of a really solid 70s Bulls team for Norm Van Lier, Jerry Sloan, and Bob Love. So he was actually the leading scorer on that team, so a very solid defensive player. I might do a comparison between these two sometime, because Chet Walker may be a better scorer than Cliff Hagan was, but they're fairly close, I think. Obviously, Chet Walker played in more recent... He played in the 60s, and Cliff Hagan played in the 50s, so... Anyways, fairly close, but yeah, Chet Walker played in a little bit more recent era. Okay. Final spot, right? I'm going to say Paul George for now. Paul George gets you 20 points a game, about 6 rebounds, 4 assists a game. Great defensive player. He hasn't really shown himself in the playoffs so far, especially last season, but his career so far is on the trajectory right now to be a top 120 player, so I think that's where I have him so far. He might go up even higher if he gets more playoff success, but I think the 2014 Pacers was probably his best team. So yeah, I think Paul George, as the leader of that team, by the way, so that actually counts for something. So I think, yeah, Paul George, Chet Walker, Cliff Hagan, all pretty close. Yeah, these guys are going to round out my top 120. Okay, so we got 10 left. Whew. Jeez, it's so hard ranking those guys. 10 left. Okay. We're going to pick for the last 10 from a top 130. Point guard list. I'm gonna go with Lenny Wilkens. Lenny Wilkens in his prime, part of the Supersonics, gave you like 20 points, maybe like 6 rebounds, and they'll give you like 8 or 9 assists a game. Pretty solid all-around numbers, actually. Most people know Lenny Wilkens as a coach, but he was a pretty darn good player as well. 9-time All-Star, I think. Just a really good passer for his time. And he led those Sonics teams pretty well. I think when he was with the Sonics, even though they had Spencer Haywood was the main, offensive player for that Sonics teams, but Lenny Wilkens was kind of the heart of the Sonics teams. So, yeah, Lenny Wilkens. And I'm also going to put Tim Hardaway as well. Actually, Tim Hardaway or Kyle Lowry is pretty interesting. Oh, you know what? Kyrie Irving. I almost forgot about this guy. Yeah, Kyrie Irving definitely deserves to be here. Yeah, Kyrie Irving, he might actually even be higher than this, but I mean, it depends, right? The Nets might actually win a championship, and if they win a championship this season, then they'll go higher. But what can I say about Kyrie? Second best player on a championship team, 2016 Cavs, obviously. Very, very good ball handling skills. Probably the best ball handler ever, actually. Offensively, he's a dynamo. Very hard, difficult to guard. But just not a guy that you would have as the best player in your team. But second or third best player, yeah. I think Kyrie Irving's good. So yeah, I think I'll put... Is this where he belongs? I might actually... I'm not actually sure if he's better. It's actually pretty close. Him, Paul George, LaMarcus Aldridge, these guys, it's pretty tough. I mean, between Kyrie Irving, LaMarcus Aldridge, Paul George, it's pretty tough. I'll leave him here for now, I think. Actually, I might move him up. Maybe put... Yeah, these guys is... It's hard to know. Oh, okay. Kyrie Irving definitely has the opportunity to move up later on in his career for sure, I think. Let's put Cliff Hagan down for now. Sorry, Cliff. Kyrie Irving will go up here. I think he's actually 120 all time. Yeah. All right. Then for shooting guards, Vince Carter, I think. Talking about a guy who played what? He played like almost the most. I think him and Bauer Parrish probably played the most seasons of all time. Talking about a guy who played in 3 different decades. The 90s, the 2000s, and 2010s. No, 4 different decades, I think. Right? 2020s as well. Yeah, Vince Carter had massive longevity, man. Massive longevity. Actually, I'm just going to move it. I'm going to put Kyrie back, yeah. I just want these 3 to be together, okay. Kyrie, Vince Carter. It's tough. Kyrie and Vince Carter, who's better, right? Yeah, Vince Carter in his prime, one of the best scorers of his era. Super athletic. Probably the best dunker of all time. Incredible longevity. Just his role kind of trailed off later in his career. He had an incredible long career, but it's just his prime was actually kind of short, right? So Klay Thompson, I think deserves to be in top 130. So put him there. I'm gonna say one of the best shooters of all time. Great defender. Second best player for a championship team and third best player for 2 championship teams. Yeah, one of the best shooters ever. So Klay Thompson, solid number 2, number 3 option. So it's to be there, and just like Klay Thompson, Manu Ginobili as well, because I think Manu Ginobili also deserves, very close. I might actually compare these two later on, but Manu and Klay, both guys could be the second or third options on your team, and you'll win stuff. They're both good shooters. Manu could actually maybe be even better on offense because he can create his own shots better. Klay Thompson's more of a spot-up shooter. I'm not sure how good he is at creating his own shots. He's more of a spot-up shooter and catch and shoot guy. Manu can actually create his own shots, but he doesn't have the hotness that Klay gets. When Klay gets hot, he gets hot, you know. So, anyways, those guys are pretty close. And then I will put this guy is really underrated, Freddie Lewis. People don't know who Freddie Lewis is. He was the second or third best player on a few Pacers championship teams in the ABA. Because it's the ABA, most people don't know about it, but the guy actually won a Finals MVP in the ABA, and he'll give you really solid numbers in the playoffs. He'll give you like 18 to 20 points a game, consistently, 5 assists, 5 rebounds a game. Second and third best player on a lot of those championship teams. But he had a Finals MVP, 3 championships. So yeah, definitely he's in line with these guys. I mean, Freddie Lewis is more like, yeah, Klay Thompson, Manu, Freddie Lewis, pretty close. All right, I think we're good on the small forwards. Power forwards, I think we might be good here as well. Centers. Huh, did I use up all my guys here already? Interesting, okay. I might go a little bit deeper with the guards then. Okay. I might actually put Rajon Rondo. So Rajon Rondo, obviously he's not a good shooter. Not a good scorer, not a good shooter, but triple doubles, he'll give you those. He's a great rebounder for his size, great passer, led league in assists like 3 times I think, and pretty good defender too. And Rondo will actually up his game in the playoffs like he always does. So playoff Rondo will up those averages a lot. So you know, Rondo with the intangibles, he's almost like think of Rondo as almost like the point guard version of Draymond Green, because he's a guy that will really be good as a role player. And he's always a guy that will up his game in the playoffs whenever you need him, but he won't be your like first or second option. So he's almost like the Draymond Green of point guards. But I won't have Draymond Green in my top 130, unfortunately. Who else? Oh yeah, JoJo White. Yep. God, you didn't have him yet. JoJo White. Finals MVP for the 1970 Celtics, 3rd best player on that team, sometimes 2nd best player, but I think Dave Cowens would actually be the 2nd best player. So, yeah, for those 1970 Celtics, he'll give you a consistent like 17 to 20 points a game, ups his game in the playoffs, give you 5 assists, 5 rebounds, pretty close actually. JoJo White, a lot of these guards are actually really close to each other. White and Freddie Lewis, and yeah, they're all pretty close. But yeah, JoJo White's solid. Definitely top 130 for me. And oh yes, I forgot. Jamal Wilkes as well. Jamal Wilkes, I'm going to talk about him. Kind of underrated actually, because James Worthy his successor is way more well known. But Jamal Wilkes, when he was with the Lakers, he was really key to their first 3 championship teams. Actually, really key to the 1975 Warriors team as well, because he was the 2nd best player in that team after Rick Barry as a rookie. But yeah, in the 1980, 1982 championships, I think Jamal Wilkes was pretty crucial. He wasn't as good as James Worthy, but he's still up there. I mean, still give you 17 points a night, and he'll still give you. He's pretty good defense too. And you like 5 rebounds, 3 assists a game. Yeah, I mean, solid part of those Showtime, the early part of those Showtime Lakers teams with Norm Nixon and Jamal Wilkes, right? Yeah, the last spot here, the number 130 spot, actually, I think I made a mistake here. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe it's because I've been drinking. I've been having some wine, but I did leave out a really good player. So my shooting guards list, guess what? I left out Clyde the Glide Drexler. Yes. How could I leave out Clyde the Glide, right? So somehow I left out Clyde the Glide Drexler. And Clyde has to be there. I mean, he's all-time great shooting guard, all-time great player. You know, led the Trailblazers to 2 NBA Finals as the best player. Where should I put him? I think he actually belongs in a similar tier to Dominique and Paul Pierce and Billy Cunningham and these guys. So I'm actually going to move. Sorry, Dennis Johnson, I'm going to move you down. Clyde the Glide Drexler. So great rebounding guard. If it wasn't for Michael Jordan, he probably would have had a ring. And then he later won a ring with Hakeem, obviously. But yeah, best player on 2 NBA Finals teams. And probably, I would say, second best shooting guard of the 1990s, I think. I mean, you talk about Reggie Miller, Mitch Richmond, Joe Dumars, so many other non-Jordan shooting guards in the 1990s. Clyde Drexler might be the second best out of those, out of all the shooting guards, right? So you have right after Michael Jordan, probably Clyde Drexler, and then Mitch Richmond, and then Reggie Miller, Joe Dumars, the rest of them. So yeah, okay. I'm gonna put Clyde Drexler in the 61 to 70 range. I think that's where he belongs. And then we're gonna move down Dennis Johnson. I'm gonna move down Neil Johnston. Sorry, Neil Johnston. I'm gonna move you down, and I'm gonna have to move down Chauncey Billups a little bit. From this here, I'll move down Ben Wallace, because Ben Wallace is an all-time great defender, but just offensively, he's lacking compared to these guys. So that's the thing. Like, that's why. I mean, he's really, really one-dimensional. I mean, even Dennis Rodman had the rebounding thing going for him, but Ben Wallace is like super one-dimensional. So, I mean, Ben Wallace can rebound, just not as well as Dennis Rodman can, right? And he's probably around the same level defense. So that's why, like, Ben Wallace and Dennis Rodman, like, their defense level is pretty similar. They're both all-time good defenders. Rodman at least was better at rebounding. Ben Wallace is a good rebounder too, right? Obviously, he led the league in rebounding too, but Rodman led the league 7 times in rebounding in the 1990s, so that's pretty crazy. And I'm gonna move Ben Wallace down. I'm gonna move out Bailey Howell, and I'm gonna move Bailey Howell down here a bit. I'm gonna move Ed McCauley down. And one more change I'm gonna make is I like Rajon Rondo, but as a player, who's the greater player? It's hard to say. It's tough. I think Rajon Rondo is probably the weakest out of these guys. I'm gonna put in Tim Hardaway. I think Tim Hardaway was a better player than Rajon Rondo. He didn't win any championships, but great player with the Warriors and then later with the Heat, right? I think he's a better player than Rondo. Rondo has more awards because he played on 2 championship teams, right? The Boston Celtics and the Lakers last year, although he wasn't even close to being the best player on either of those teams. And he can put up triple doubles, and he's a good defender and everything. But I just think Tim Hardaway is a better player than Rondo, so I'm going to put it here. And therefore, my list is now complete. All right. All right, so just to go over overall, let's just do a walkthrough of my whole list now that's complete. Top 130 greatest NBA players of all time. So 1 to 10, of course, I got Michael Jordan. This is not in order, by the way. It's not in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just whoever I think is in the top 10, top 20, top 30 bucket. So yeah, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Tim Duncan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Shaq, Hakeem Olajuwon. And then in my 11 to 20, I got Kobe, Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, Curry, Kevin Durant, Dr. J, Karl Malone, Bob Pettit, Moses Malone, and John Hondo Havlicek. And then my top 30, we got D. Wade, John Stockton, CP3, Scottie Pippen, Rick Barry, Elgin Baylor, Charles Barkley, Kevin Garnett, David Robinson, Artis Gilmore. My 30 to 40, I got Walt Frazier, Bob Cousy, Isaiah Thomas, Jason Kidd, Allen Iverson, Alvin Hayes, Dirk Nowitzki, Patrick Ewing, George Mikan, and George Gervin. Then my 40-50, I got Steve Nash, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Willis Reed, Mel Daniels, Russell Westbrook, Dolph Schayes, Kevin McHale, Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard. 50-60, I got Gary Payton, Sam Jones, Paul Urizen, Connie Hawkins, George McGinnis, Giannis, Dan Issel, Bob McAdoo, Dave Cowens, Bill Walton. 60-70, I got Tony Parker, Hal Greer, Clyde Drexler, Dominique Wilkins, Billy Cunningham, Paul Pierce, Spencer Haywood, Jerry Lucas, Dave DeBusschere, and Wes Unseld. And then 70-80, I got Ray Allen, T-Mac, James Worthy, Roger Brown, Alex English, Melo, Adrian Dantley, Dennis Rodman, Paul Gasol, Dennis Johnson. 80 to 90, I got Tiny Archibald, Neil Johnston, Damian Lillard, Bill Sharman, Chris Webber, Tom Heinsohn, Dikembe Mutombo, Nate Thurmond, Pete Maravich, Reggie Miller, 9200. I got Mitch Richmond. Actually, I wonder, is Mitch Richmond better than Reggie Miller? That's an interesting one. Kind of tough. I remember I said Mitch Richmond was after Clyde Drexler in the 90s. I don't know. I think those two are pretty interchangeable. I think I might do a comparison video between these two. It's tough. Reggie Miller and Mitch Richmond. Wow, it's tough to choose between those guys. I'll have just Reggie Miller slightly, ever so slightly higher for now. But it could go either way. I mean, I could have Mitch Richmond higher as well. But yeah, Mitch Richmond. Yeah, I'll have Reggie Miller higher for now. So yeah, Mitch Richmond, Sidney Moncrief. This is for my 9200. Mitch Richmond, Sidney Moncrief, Joe Dumars, Bobby Jones, Bernard King, Robert Parrish, Bob Lanier, Lonzo Mourning, Chauncey Billups, and Walt Bellamy. Then my 100 to 110, Samuel Beatty, Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Jack Sigma, Chris Bosh, Mark Stoudemire, Ben Wallace, David Thompson, Blake Griffin, and Bob Dandridge. Then my 110 to 120, I got Dave Bing, Kevin Johnson, Luka Doncic, Grant Hill, Marcus Johnson, LaMarcus Aldridge, Bailey Howell, Cliff Hagan, Chet Walker, Paul George, and then finally my 120 to 130, I got Lenny Wilkins, Kyrie Irving, Vince Carter, Klay Thompson, Manu Ginobili, Freddie Lewis, Tim Hardaway, JoJo White, Jamal Wilkes, and Ed McCauley. And that's it. That is my top 130 greatest NBA, ABA players of all time. Let me know how I did. And again, this is my opinion according to my list. I mean, obviously, I probably pissed a lot of people off by having Kobe in the top 20 and Dirk in the top 40, but hey, it's my list, you know. It's the tough ranking. And especially because I put ABA players, I acknowledge ABA awards, which is why I had to push some of these guys out, right? Artis Gilmore is probably not a top 30 people. Like, Artis Gilmore is probably not a top 30 player for many people because they don't count ABA awards, which is why he's so high. Same thing with Dan Issel, right? For me, Dan Issel is a top 60 player. For a lot of people, he's way beyond that, right? But I count ABA awards. Mel Daniels, again, most people don't even know about Mel Daniels. They don't put him up here. But I count his ABA awards, so he deserves to be up here. But people that don't count their ABA achievements, then obviously they won't have Mel Daniels here or Artis Gilmore. But I have these guys up there. So yeah, that is my list. Let me know how I did, and leave any comments in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching. This is my top 130 greatest NBA ABA players of all time. It is very hard to make this list. Yeah. So and I left out a lot of good players too, right? I think some of the great players I might have left out. I think I got most of the great centers. Power forwards, probably Sean Kemp. Maurice Lucas is pretty good as well. Bob Love, pretty good. Small forwards, what did I leave out? Let's see. Gus Johnson. Yeah, I think Gus Johnson's pretty good. Very underrated player. Chris Mullin. Willie Wise. Very underrated because he played in the ABA. There's guys, a few guys left out there. SGs, I left out Alvin Robertson, Gail Goodrick, Paul Westphal, Earl Monroe, Jimmy Butler, Walter Davis. These are pretty good guys. PGs, Rondo, like I said, very close to making the list. Louis Dampier. Left him out. Jimmy Jones, because he's our ABA guys. Most people don't know him. Kyle Lowry, Maurice Cheeks, Matt Calvin, another ABA guy, Derrick Rose. So yeah, I left out a lot of good players, but it is what it is. It's hard to rank these things. I think in general I left out a lot of the guards because the guards start to get... the interesting thing is like the further down you go, the more stacked the guards get. But at the beginning, the forwards and the centers are actually pretty good. And then once you start getting towards the end, you get less good centers and forwards and you get more good guards, right? So anyways, yeah, let me know how I did and whether you agree or disagree. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with my list. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time. It's my ranking of top 130 greatest players.